The static always came first. I was 3 minutes from Harrington Station when I heard my own voice through the cab radio. Not similar, identical. The cadence, the slight rasp from years of breathing recycled tunnel air. Even the way I cleared my throat before speaking. It said, Unit 47 southbound clearance revoked. Return to depot immediately. I'd been operating Line 6 for 11 years. You learn the rhythm of the rails, the way dispatch phrases their commands, the particular hiss of interference at mile marker 9. This wasn't any of that. This was me telling myself to turn back. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. Did you just broadcast on my channel? The response came through clean. Negative 47, your line is clear. Proceed as scheduled. That was Deborah's voice. Our night dispatcher, 15 years on the board, never made an error. But underneath her transmission, barely audible, I heard it again. My voice, whispering coordinates I didn't recognize. The rest of that shift passed without incident. I filed no report. What would I even say? That the intercom was haunted by my own vocal cords? They'd put me on psychiatric leave, run the standard battery of tests, maybe pension me out early with a diagnosis of operator fatigue. I'd seen it happen to Connor back in '09. He claimed the tunnel lights were following him. 3 weeks later, he was working security at a shopping mall, so I stayed quiet. The second occurrence happened 4 nights later. Same route, same approximate time. 2:47 a.m., just past the Greenfield Junction. This time the voice didn't use the radio. It came through the passenger intercom, the PA system I controlled from my cab. Next stop, Ashwood Terminal. Please prepare for final departure. My hand wasn't on the broadcast button. The switch was in the off position. But the announcement continued, perfectly timed with the station approach using inflections I recognized from 1,000 routine calls. Except Ashwood Terminal had been decommissioned in 1986, a full decade before I even started training. I checked the route map illuminated above my console. No Ashwood. The line ran straight from Greenfield to Monument Square. Had done so since the track realignment of '84. I pulled the train into Monument, completed my passenger check, 7 riders all accounted for, none of them alarmed by the phantom announcement. When I asked one woman if she'd heard anything unusual, she looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a calculus equation. Just the normal stops, she said, then returned to her phone. I started documenting everything. Kept a pocket recorder running during my shifts. Noted the exact time and location of each anomaly. Over the next 2 weeks, the transmissions became more frequent. Always my voice. Always referencing locations that didn't align with my route. Stations I'd never heard of. Tunnel sections that shouldn't exist according to the official schematics. The strangest part wasn't the content. It was the specificity on October 14th. At 3:12 a.m., the voice said, Operator Russell Garrett, you missed your 11:30 p.m. check-in at Riverside on September 9th, 2019. This constitutes a protocol violation. I pulled my old logs. September 9th, 2019. I'd called in sick that day, stomach flu, spent the whole shift in bed. There was no check-in to miss because I wasn't working. But the voice insisted. With the patient authority of someone reading from an official record, it knew my full name. It knew my exact schedule going back years, and it was keeping a ledger I couldn't access. I went to archives during my day off. The transit authority keeps meticulous records. Every route adjustment, every station modification, every operator assignment since the system opened in 1952. I requested all documentation related to the stations mentioned in the transmissions. Ashwood Terminal, Riverside Junction, Clearview Depot. The archivist, a thin man named Paul with wire-rimmed glasses, searched for 20 minutes before returning empty-handed. Nothing in the system, he said. Are you sure those are the correct names? Sometimes the old-timers used informal designations. I showed him my notes. He studied them carefully, then pulled up a digitized map from 1961. Here, he pointed to a faint line extending south from what was now the Monument Square station. This was the proposed Extension 7, never completed. The tunnels were excavated, but the project was abandoned after the funding collapsed. The city sealed them in '63. What was the first station on that extension supposed to be? He zoomed in. The label was barely legible, faded with age. Ashwood Terminal. That night I stayed late after my shift ended. Told Deborah I needed to run a systems diagnostic on Unit 47. Nothing urgent. just routine maintenance logs. She cleared me for an extra hour of track access, and I took the train south past Monument Square into the service tunnel that branched toward the maintenance depot. Except I didn't turn toward the depot. I kept going straight, following a set of rails I'd seen 1,000 times but never questioned. They ran parallel to the main line for about half a mile, then diverged into darkness. No lights, no signaling equipment, just two rails extending into a tunnel mouth that shouldn't exist according to every map I'd studied. The cab radio crackled. Unit 47, you are now entering Ashwood Terminal. Please reduce speed and prepare for platform arrival. My own voice again, calm and procedural. I checked the speedometer. I was doing 40, far too fast for a station approach. I hadn't touched the throttle. My hand moved to the brake, but before I could engage it, the tunnel opened up. There was a platform, not abandoned, not decrepit, fully lit, with gleaming tiles and vintage 1960s benches. The departure board was active, displaying a single route in amber letters. Line 6 southbound, Operator R. Garrett, final service. The train slowed on its own, braking with mechanical precision, and stopped perfectly aligned with the platform edge. The doors opened, no one was there. But the air that drifted into the cab was wrong. Too cold, with a faint metallic scent like old pennies. And underneath that I could hear breathing. Not human breathing. Something slower, more deliberate, like the tunnel itself was exhaling. I stared at the departure board. The time display was running backward, counting down from 11:30 p.m., September 9th, 2019, the date I'd called in sick. The shift I'd never worked. The PA system activated without my input. Operator Garrett, your shift has been logged. Welcome to your permanent assignment. I slammed the door controls and hit the throttle, pulling away from Ashwood Terminal with enough force to throw me against the console. The tunnel blurred past, and when I emerged back into the service line near the depot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely key the radio. Dispatch, Unit 47 returning to depot. No issues to report. Deborah's voice came back clean and professional. Copy that, 47, see you tomorrow night. But underneath her words, almost imperceptible, I heard it again. My voice, whispering, see you tomorrow night. I submitted my resignation the next morning. Told them I was taking a position with a freight company upstate. Better pay, closer to family. They processed my paperwork within a week, gave me a small retirement ceremony, wished me well. I haven't been back underground since. But sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I hear the faint hiss of a radio transmission. It's always the same message, repeating on a loop I can't shut off. Unit 47, southbound clearance revoked. Return to depot immediately. I never answer, because I'm terrified of what might happen if the voice on the other end isn't mine anymore. Last lines. Some tunnels hum long after the last train's gone through. I still hear that sound like something waiting for its next stop. And I've started to wonder, if a station can exist outside official records, what else is down there logging shifts that never end? The maintenance crews probably know. They're the ones who go deeper than operators ever do, into the places where the maps just stop. Maintenance is all about patterns. You walk the same tunnels, check the same junction boxes, note the same wear patterns on the rails. After 6 years with the Transit Authority, I could identify a loose bolt by sound alone. The particular rattle it made when a train passed overhead. The frequency shift that meant tension loss. I kept meticulous logs. Every inspection recorded in the digital maintenance system, time-stamped and signed with my employee ID. K. Morrison, Tunnel Maintenance Engineer, Sector 4. The system was supposed to be secure. Read-only access for supervisors, write access only for certified engineers. No exceptions. The first anomaly appeared on a Tuesday. I was reviewing my previous night's inspection notes, standard procedure, checking for patterns or missed items, when I noticed an entry I didn't remember writing. It was dated for the following day, Wednesday, 11:47 p.m., Sector 4, Junction 12B, catastrophic rail fracture. Recommend immediate replacement. Signed, K. Morrison. I stared at the timestamp. The entry was logged for a time that hadn't happened yet, describing damage I hadn't observed. I scrolled through the previous weeks, looking for similar errors. Nothing. Just my regular entries properly sequenced. No temporal anomalies. I assumed it was a system glitch. Maybe a corrupted timestamp during a database backup. I flagged it for IT and went about my shift. Wednesday night, 11:35 p.m., I was inspecting Junction 12B when I heard it. A sharp crack like a rifle shot echoing through the tunnel. I turned my flashlight toward track 3 and saw the rail split cleanly in two. A fracture line spreading along the weld point with slow, inevitable precision. 12 minutes before the log entry said it would happen. I called it in immediately. Dispatch rerouted all traffic and we had a repair crew on site within an hour. The night supervisor, Tom Wyatt, walked the site with me examining the break. "How'd you know to check this junction tonight?" he asked. I didn't tell him about the log entry. Instead, I said I'd noticed unusual wear patterns during my previous inspection. He seemed satisfied with that answer, but I wasn't. I went home that morning and pulled up the maintenance database on my personal laptop. The entry was still there, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. Wednesday, signed with my ID. I checked the metadata. The record creation time showed Tuesday, 2:13 a.m., roughly 36 hours before the fracture occurred. I'd been home asleep at 2:13 a.m. Tuesday. My last login to the system had been 10:52 p.m. Monday, when I'd filed my end-of-shift report. Someone, or something, had accessed my account and logged an accident before it happened. The second entry appeared Friday, Sector 4, mile marker 7.3. Signal malfunction leading to near-miss collision. Operator unable to brake in time. No casualties. Signed K. Morrison. Time stamped for Saturday, 1:22 a.m. I didn't report it this time. Instead, I went to mile marker 7.3 on Friday night and inspected every component of the signal system. Everything checked out. Relays, wiring, lamp assemblies, all within spec. I even ran a diagnostic with my handheld tester. Green across the board. At 1:18 a.m. Saturday, I was still there, sitting on a maintenance platform with a clear view of the signal light, when it happened. The light flickered once, then went dark. Completely dead. 4 minutes later, I heard the train approaching from the north, a late-night express running at full speed. The operator wouldn't know the signal was out. Without the red light, he'd assume clear track. I grabbed my emergency beacon and ran toward the tunnel entrance, waving it frantically. The train's headlight appeared around the curve, and I saw the exact moment the operator spotted me, the sudden lurch as he hit the brakes, the scream of metal on metal as the wheels locked. The train stopped 6 feet from where I was standing. The operator, a woman named Ellis I'd worked with before, leaned out of her cab window, face pale. "What the hell, Morrison?" "That signal was green. It went dark," I said. 4 minutes ago. "System failure," she radioed it in. Dispatch confirmed the signal had dropped off their board at exactly 1:18 a.m., the moment I'd watched it die. The entry in the log was perfect, down to the phrase near-miss collision and the detail no casualties. I started checking the database obsessively. Every shift before and after my tunnel walks, I'd log in and scan for new entries. They appeared like clockwork, always 1 or 2 days ahead, always describing incidents in my sector, always signed with my credentials. Ventilation duct collapse, mile marker 4.1. Minor debris. Signed K. Morrison. Power conduit exposure, junction 8A. Electrical hazard contained. Signed K. Morrison. Track subsidence, south tunnel access. No derailment. Signed K. Morrison. Every single one came true. I tried changing my password. The entries continued. I reported the issue to IT. They found no evidence of unauthorized access, no login attempts from unknown locations. As far as the system was concerned, I was writing these entries myself during my regular shifts. "Are you sure you're not just forgetting?" the IT tech asked with a tone that suggested he thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. The final entry appeared 3 weeks later. Sector 4, Central Hub Junction. Structural failure during operator K. Morrison's inspection. Fatal collapse. Recovery delayed due to unstable debris field. Signed, K. Morrison. Time stamped for Monday, 3:47 a.m. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading and rereading those words. Fatal collapse. My own initials predicting my own death. I didn't go to work Monday night. Called in sick, first time in 6 years. Spent the whole shift sitting in my apartment watching the clock. At 3:47 a.m. I was still alive, still breathing, still wondering if I'd just broken the pattern by not being there. Tuesday. I logged into the database. The entry had updated itself. Sector 4, Central Hub Junction. Structural failure during operator K. Morrison's inspection. Fatal collapse. Recovery delayed due to unstable debris field. Signed K. Morrison. Time stamped for Tuesday 3:47 a.m. It had moved. Pushed forward by exactly 24 hours. I called Tom Wyatt, told him I needed to take emergency leave. Family emergency upstate. He approved it immediately. I'd never asked for time off before. Had built up months of unused leave. I packed a bag and drove north, putting as much distance between myself and Sector 4 as I could. That was 6 months ago. I still check the database sometimes late at night when I can't sleep. My account is still active. They never deactivated it, probably assuming I'd come back eventually. The entry is still there. Sector 4, Central Hub Junction. Structural failure during operator K. Morrison's inspection. Fatal collapse. Recovery delayed due to unstable debris field. Signed K. Morrison. The timestamp keeps updating. Always 3:47 a.m. Always the next day. It's waiting for me to come back. And the thing that terrifies me most isn't the prediction itself. It's that somewhere, in some version of the timeline I can't see, I've already gone back. I've already signed that final report. Last lines. They say the tunnels remember everything, every structural failure, every dropped bolt, every near miss that almost wasn't. I think they're right, and I think they remember things that haven't happened yet too. The real question is, who's reading those memories? Who's turning them into maintenance logs with perfect handwriting? Maybe the passengers would know, the ones who ride the same lines every night, watching the same stations blur past. Maybe they've seen something the rest of us missed. The southbound midnight run was supposed to be the easiest assignment. 15 stops, minimal passenger traffic, straight shot through the industrial district. Most nights I'd carry maybe a dozen people total. Late shift workers, insomniacs, the occasional drunk trying to find their way home. By the time I reached Monument Park, the train was usually empty except for me and the hum of the motors. Except for Car 7. I first noticed her 3 weeks into my rotation. The route monitor in my cab displayed a live passenger count for each car, weight sensors and motion detectors that helped us track capacity and distribution. Cars 1 through 6 showed 0. Car 7 showed 1. I checked the security feed. The camera in Car 7 gave me a grainy black and white view of the interior. Rows of empty seats, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows, advertisement posters for personal injury lawyers and community college programs. And in seat 14C, third row from the rear door, a woman sat perfectly still. She wore a dark coat buttoned to the collar. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers interlaced. She stared straight ahead at the seat back in front of her, not looking at her phone, not reading, not moving at all. I watched her for 3 stops. She didn't shift position once. Didn't blink as far as I could tell from the low-resolution feed. At Riverside Station, I made an announcement. Riverside Station, doors opening on the right. I waited the standard 30 seconds watching the platform camera. No one boarded. No one exited. When the doors closed and the train pulled away, I checked Car 7 again. She was still there. Same position. Same seat. I told myself she'd get off eventually. Some people just zone out during late-night commutes, lost in thought or exhaustion. But when I reached the end of the line at Commerce Terminal, the passenger count for Car 7 still showed 1. I left the cab and walked back through the train, checking each car. 1 through 6 were empty, exactly as expected. When I opened the connecting door to Car 7, cold air hit me, much colder than the other cars. Cold enough that I could see my breath. Seat 14C was empty. I checked under the seats in the bathrooms, even in the small utility compartment at the end of the car. Nothing. No sign anyone had been there. But when I returned to the cab and pulled up the security footage, she was visible in the recording, sitting motionless in 14C for the entire run. I filed a report with maintenance, suggesting a malfunction with the weight sensors in Car 7. They ran a diagnostic the next day, found nothing wrong. Calibration's perfect, the tech told me. Probably just a glitch in the display. You know how these old systems are. But it wasn't just the display. She appeared every night after that. Always the same seat, always the same posture, always during my midnight southbound run. I started documenting it, screenshots of the feed, notes on exactly when she appeared and disappeared. The pattern was consistent. She showed up on the camera feed as soon as the train left Central Station, the third stop on the route, and remained visible until I reached Commerce Terminal. I never saw her board. I never saw her leave. The other operators started noticing I was distracted. Connor, who ran the northbound midnight route that passed mine twice a night, asked if I was sleeping okay. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. Laughing, I didn't laugh back. I decided to force the issue. On Thursday night, when the passenger count showed she was in car 7, I stopped the train between stations, right in the middle of the tunnel between Riverside and Monument Park. Emergency stop, full brake engagement. The train lurched hard and I grabbed the radio. "Unit 23 to dispatch, I have a passenger emergency in car 7, requesting medical standby." Dispatch responded immediately. "Copy, Unit 23, what's the nature of the emergency?" "Unresponsive passenger." "I'm checking now." I left the cab and walked back to car 7, my flashlight cutting through the dim tunnel lighting. When I opened the connecting door, that same cold air poured out. Colder now. Cold enough that frost was forming on the metal handrails. Seat 14C was empty. But the seat itself was wrong. The fabric was darker than the others, almost black, and when I reached out to touch it, my hand recoiled instinctively. It was ice cold. Not cool like the rest of the train in winter. Cold like something pulled from a freezer. I checked the security feed on my handheld tablet. The camera showed her sitting there clear as day, staring at the seat back. I was looking directly at seat 14C. It was empty, but the camera said otherwise. I backed out of car 7 and radioed dispatch. False alarm. Passenger disembarked at the last station. Resuming route. They didn't question it. I started avoiding car 7 entirely. Stopped checking the feed. Stopped looking at the passenger count. But I couldn't avoid the cold. Every night when the train passed through the tunnel between Riverside and Monument Park, the temperature in the cab would drop. Not much, just a few degrees, enough to notice. And I'd hear something over the motor noise. A faint sound, like fabric rustling, like someone shifting position in a seat. I requested a transfer to a different route. My supervisor, Angela Hayes, denied it. "You've only been on the midnight southbound for 2 months. Give it a full quarter before we consider reassignments." "There's something wrong with car 7, I said. She frowned. "Wrong how?" I couldn't explain it without sounding insane. "The climate control. It runs too cold." She promised to have maintenance check it. They did. Found nothing abnormal. The passenger count in car 7 remained at 1. I started researching the route history. Pulled old incident reports, maintenance logs, anything that might explain what I was seeing. Most of it was routine. Track repairs, signal maintenance, minor delays. But buried in a folder marked Archived Incidents 1998, I found something. A passenger death. Her name was Claire Novak, age 34. She'd been riding the southbound midnight train on March 17, 1998, when she suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. The operator, someone named Dennis Pryor, didn't realize she'd died until he reached the end of the line and found her unresponsive in car 7, seat 14C. I looked up the date. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I checked my calendar. It was March 15th, 2 days. I didn't work that night. Called in sick. Told Angela I had food poisoning. She wasn't happy about it, but she found someone to cover my shift. I stayed home, door locked, trying to convince myself that the coincidence meant nothing. At 12:47 a.m., the exact time my train would have been passing through the tunnel between Riverside and Monument Park, I felt the temperature in my apartment drop. Not gradually, instantly. My breath misted in front of me. The windows fogged over, and from somewhere in the building, muffled and distant, I heard the sound of a train passing. I lived 6 blocks from the nearest station. When I went back to work 2 days later, Angela pulled me aside. "Pryor covered your shift on the 17th. He said car 7 was acting up. Temperature control issues. We're taking it out of service for a full inspection." "Did he see anything?" She gave me a strange look. "See anything?" "Like what?" I didn't answer. They inspected car 7 for a week. Found nothing wrong with the climate control, the wiring, the sensors. Everything was within normal parameters. They put it back in service. The passenger count still shows 1. I don't check the security feed anymore. I don't stop the train between stations. I just run my route, watch the stops blur past, and try to ignore the cold that seeps into the cab every night around. 12:47 a.m. seat 14C stays empty, but the camera knows different. Last lines. They say the tunnels hold on to things, voices, temperatures, the weight of bodies long since removed. I believe them now. Car 7 remembers Claire Novak, even if the rest of the system doesn't. And I think she's still trying to reach her stop, still waiting for the doors to open, still hoping someone will notice she's been there all along. Maybe the conductors know. They're the ones who walk the cars, who check the seats, who see the passengers we operators only monitor from a distance. There are sections of the system we don't talk about, not officially, not in the training manuals or the route briefings or the safety seminars new operators sit through, but in the break rooms during the quiet hours before dawn when the last trains are coming in. You hear things. Stories passed down from operators who've been on the rails for decades. About tunnels that don't appear on the maps. About sections sealed off for reasons no one will explain. Tunnel 43B was one of those stories. I'd heard the designation mentioned exactly twice in my 8 years with the Transit Authority. Once by Gregory Stone, a track maintenance supervisor who'd retired in 2019, who'd made a joke about pulling the short straw and getting assigned to 43B duty. He'd laughed when he said it, but the laugh didn't reach his eyes. The second mention came from a dispatcher named Rachel Klein, who'd let it slip during a radio check when she was training a new hire. And remember, if you see any routing through 43B, that's an automatic error report. That section doesn't exist anymore. The new hire asked why. Rachel didn't answer. I looked it up once out of curiosity, digging through the old engineering documents archived in the system library. Tunnel 43B had been part of the original 1957 expansion plan, a connector tunnel that was supposed to link the northern industrial line with the eastern residential route, cutting travel time by 15 minutes. They'd excavated it, laid the rails, installed the signal equipment, but before the first train ran through, the project was canceled. No explanation in the files, just a terse notation. Project discontinued. Tunnel sealed per city ordinance. The documents showed it branching off from Junction 12, about 2 miles north of the Riverside Depot. I'd passed that junction thousands of times. There was no branch, just a solid concrete wall where the tunnel mouth would have been, painted with the same industrial gray as the rest of the system, marked with a faded yellow stripe that indicated no clearance beyond that point. Until the night of October 8th, I was operating Unit 31, the 1:15 a.m. northbound express. Running light after dropping my last passengers at Central Station, it was a straight shot back to the depot. 12 minutes of empty track, routine shutdown procedures, then home by 2:30 if the timings held. At Junction 12, the train switched tracks on its own, not violently, not with the mechanical failure you'd expect from a malfunction. The switch engaged smoothly, professionally, as if I'd triggered it myself. But I hadn't touched the controls. My hands were resting on the console, nowhere near the routing override. The track indicator on my display changed from Route 1 North to Route 43B. I stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. Route 43B, a designation that didn't exist. My training kicked in automatically. I reached for the brake, ready to initiate an emergency stop when the radio crackled. Unit 31, routing confirmed for 43B. Proceed at standard speed. It was dispatch, same voice I'd heard a dozen times that shift, same professional cadence, but the words were wrong. Dispatch would never confirm routing for a sealed tunnel. They'd be screaming at me to stop, to hold position, to wait for maintenance. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, I'm showing Route 43B on my display. This has to be a system error. Requesting immediate stop and routing confirmation. Silence. Not static, not dead air. Just silence, the kind that feels like someone listening very carefully before deciding whether to answer. Then, Unit 31, your routing is correct. Proceed as directed. The tunnel opened up ahead of me. Not the concrete wall I'd passed 1,000 times, an actual tunnel fully lit, with working signal lights and fresh rail gleaming under the fluorescent strips. It looked exactly like every other section of the system. Industrial, functional, maintained. Except it wasn't supposed to be there. I should have stopped. Should have engaged the emergency brake. reported a critical navigation failure, refused to proceed. But something about the tunnel pulled me forward. Not physically. The train was moving at its own commanded speed, obeying signals I wasn't sending. It was something deeper, a compulsion that felt like obligation, like I was supposed to be there, like this route had been waiting specifically for me. The tunnel walls blurred past. Standard construction, standard spacing between the support beams. But the lights were wrong. They were too bright, too white, without the yellow tint of the aging bulbs used everywhere else in the system. And they were perfectly synchronized, turning on in sequence as the train approached, turning off behind me as I passed. I checked the route map on my console. It showed 43B clearly now, a dotted line extending from Junction 12 into blank space where no tunnel should exist. The estimated time to the next junction showed 8 minutes. The cab was getting colder, not gradually. It was like someone had opened a freezer door directly into my compartment. My breath missed it. Frost began forming on the inside of the windshield, spreading in delicate fractal patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like writing. I turned on the defroster. It didn't help. At the 3-minute mark, I saw the first station. It appeared suddenly as the tunnel curved left, a full platform with benches, departure boards, even a few vending machines pressed against the tiled walls. The departure board was active, displaying a single line in amber text. Route 43B, express service. No scheduled stops, the platform was empty. But the vending machines were on, their interior lights glowing, their digital displays showing prices in a currency format I didn't recognize. Not dollars. Not any symbol I'd ever seen. The train didn't slow. It passed through the station at full speed, and I caught a glimpse of something on one of the benches. A bag, dark leather, sitting upright as if someone had just set it down and walked away. The radio crackled again. Unit 31 approaching Junction 43B terminus. Prepare for standard merge and depot return. I should have felt relieved. The tunnel was ending. I'd be back on familiar track. But the voice on the radio was mine now. Not similar. Not close. Exactly mine. With the same slight hoarseness I'd developed from years of breathing tunnel air. Dispatch, who is this? No response. The tunnel began to narrow. The lights were dimming now, flickering in a rhythm that felt organic like a pulse. The temperature dropped further, cold enough that my fingers were going numb. I pulled my hands into my jacket, trying to keep circulation, and noticed something reflected in the dark windshield. There was someone standing in the cab behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The cab was empty. Just me and the controls and the cold air that tasted like metal. But when I turned back to the windshield, the reflection was still there. A silhouette, tall and thin, standing perfectly still in the space where no one could be. The tunnel opened up ahead. Junction 43B terminus was massive, easily 3 times the size of our main depot. The lights here were the old-style incandescent bulbs, casting a warm yellow glow over dozens of platforms. And on those platforms I saw them trains, old ones, models from the 60s and 70s, some even older. They sat on the tracks in perfect rows, their windows dark, their exteriors clean despite obvious age. No rust, no graffiti, no wear, just pristine vintage rolling stock arranged like museum pieces, except these weren't decommissioned. The power indicators on their roofs were lit, active, ready to move. My train slowed on its own, pulling into an empty platform at the far end of the depot. The platform number was painted in large white numerals on the support column, 47. I'd operated Unit 47 6 years ago, before it was retired and replaced with newer models. The train stopped. The doors opened. I didn't move. Couldn't move. The cold had locked my muscles, or maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the realization that the depot around me was somehow operating outside the reality I understood. The radio. Unit 31. You are now logged for permanent rotation on Route 43B. Welcome to the fleet. My voice. My exact intonation. My habit of saying welcome with a slight upward inflection at the end. I grabbed the throttle and slammed it forward, overriding every protocol I'd ever learned. The train lurched ahead, doors still open, alarms screaming from the safety systems. I didn't care. I needed to get out of that depot, away from those empty trains, away from the reflection that was still standing behind me in the windshield. The tunnel mouth appeared, not the one I'd entered through, a different one, narrower, with older signal lights. I aimed for it. The train accelerated, pushing past safe speeds, the motors screaming in protest. Behind me, I heard it, a horn, low and mournful, the kind used on trains from half a century ago. Then another. Then a dozen, all blowing at once, a chorus of mechanical mourning that echoed through the depot. The tunnel swallowed me. I don't remember the trip back. The next thing I knew, I was pulling into the normal depot, the real one, with maintenance crews staring at Unit 31 as I brought it in 40 minutes late, and with the safety override still engaged. They pulled me from the cab, ran breathalyzer tests, checked my vitals, asked if I'd had any medical episodes during the run. I told them I'd gotten disoriented, missed a routing call, ended up taking a wrong turn. The supervisor pulled up my route log on his tablet. You were logged on Route 1 North the whole time. No deviations recorded. Check 43B, I said. He frowned. What's 43B? I tried to explain. Tried to describe the tunnel, the station, the depot. He listened with the patient expression of someone humoring a confused patient, then had me sit in the office while he made phone calls. When he came back, he had a printed copy of the system map. He pointed to Junction 12. There's no tunnel here except Route 1 North. Never has been. You sure you're okay? I requested a transfer the next day. They granted it, probably relieved to move me away from the northbound express. I run a daytime route now. Local stops, heavy passenger traffic, lots of witnesses. But sometimes, late at night when I'm home and the house is quiet, I hear it, a train horn, distant and mournful, blowing in a pattern that sounds like it's calling my name, and I wonder, what if I hadn't left? What if I'd stayed in that depot, joined the fleet of empty trains? Would anyone have noticed I was gone? Last lines. The tunnels have layers, I think, routes that exist parallel to the ones we use, stations that serve passengers we can't see. Tunnel 43B is still there, still waiting for its next operator. And the thing that terrifies me most is knowing that somewhere, in some version of the route I can't access, I'm still driving that train, still hearing my own voice on the radio, telling me to proceed as directed. Maybe the schedulers know. They're the ones who determine which routes run when, who plan the system that most of us just follow. Maybe they've seen the discrepancies, the times that don't add up, the routes that shouldn't exist. The schedule is sacred. Every operator learns this on day one. The schedule determines everything. Departure times, route sequences, passenger flow, system capacity. Deviations cascade through the network, causing delays that ripple across the entire city. Miss your window by 30 seconds and you're apologizing to dispatch for the next 20 minutes. I'd run the crosstown local for 3 years without a single delay attributable to operator error. Not once. My supervisor, Walter Simmons, used to joke that I had the route memorized down to the second. He wasn't wrong. I knew exactly how long each stop took, which passengers boarded at which stations, even which door malfunctions to expect at Meridian Street. So when my display showed the route running backward, I knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. It was a Tuesday, 6:47 p.m., rush hour just beginning to thin. I'd completed the outbound run to Fairmont Terminal and was preparing the return trip downtown when the schedule updated on my console. Instead of the standard sequence, Fairmont, Brookside, Hamilton, Meridian, Central, the display showed Central, Meridian, Hamilton, Brookside, Fairmont reversed. As if I was reading yesterday's outbound schedule while preparing today's inbound, I radioed dispatch, Control Unit 16 showing reversed route schedule. Can you confirm correct sequence? The response came back immediately. Unit 16, your schedule is confirmed as displayed. Proceed on current routing. Control, the display is showing stations in reverse order. A pause. Then, Unit 16, you are scheduled for Central First routing. Proceed as directed. Central First routing didn't exist. The crosstown local always started at Fairmont on the outbound. Central on the inbound, always. For 30 years, according to the route history I'd studied during training. But dispatch was insistent, so I followed protocol. When your routing is confirmed, you run it. Questions come later, during the incident review. I pulled out of Fairmont on schedule, and the first station appeared exactly where my reverse display indicated. Central. Except it wasn't Central as I knew it. The platform was wrong, older, with tile work from the 1970s that had been replaced years ago during a renovation. The overhead lights were the old incandescent bulbs, yellow and dim. The advertisement posters showed movies I didn't recognize, products that looked dated in a way I couldn't quite place. The departure board read, Tuesday, November 7th, 1985, 6:52 p.m., 40 years ago, nearly to the minute. The train stopped. The doors opened. And passengers boarded. Not many. This was the tail end of rush hour, even in whatever version of reality I'd stumbled into. Maybe a dozen people, dressed in clothing that matched the era, heavy wool coats, dated hairstyles, briefcases instead of backpacks. They moved with the tired shuffle of commuters at the end of a long day, not looking at me, not acknowledging that anything was unusual. The PA system activated on its own. Central Station. Next stop, Meridian Street. The voice was mine, but younger, rougher, without the smoothness that comes from years of repeated announcements. I hadn't worked for the Transit Authority in 1985. I'd been 12 years old. I checked the security feed. The passengers sat in their seats staring at nothing, hands folded. Their faces were clear on the cameras, but something about them was wrong. They were too still, too synchronized, like mannequins arranged to simulate a commute. The train pulled away from Central, and I noticed the route map in the cab had changed. The stations were in different locations now, the line extending into neighborhoods I didn't recognize. Names I'd never heard in 3 years of running this route: Oakmont, Riverside Heights, Commerce Park. The next stop was Meridian Street, or what used to be Meridian Street. The platform here was completely different, utilitarian and sparse, with none of the modern renovations I knew. And when the doors opened, the PA announced, Meridian Street. Attention passenger Walter Simmons, this is your stop. Walter Simmons, my supervisor, who hadn't worked for the Transit Authority in 1985, who would have been in his 20s, maybe not even in the city yet. A man stood from one of the seats and exited onto the platform. I caught a glimpse of his face through the security feed. Younger, clean-shaven, but unmistakably Walter. Same eyes, same way of carrying himself, shoulders slightly hunched as if expecting bad news. He looked toward the cab, looked directly at me through the connecting window, and nodded once before turning away. The doors closed. The train moved. Each subsequent stop followed the same pattern. The PA would announce the station name, then call out a specific passenger, and each time someone from the Transit Authority, someone I knew or had heard of, would stand and exit. Hamilton Street. Attention passenger Gregory Stone, this is your stop. Gregory, the retired track maintenance supervisor who'd mentioned Tunnel 43B. Brookside Avenue. Attention passenger Rachel Klein, this is your stop. Rachel, the dispatcher who'd told a trainee that 43B didn't exist. Commerce Park. Attention passenger Dennis Pryor, this is your stop. Dennis, the operator who'd found Claire Novak dead in car 7. They were all there. All younger versions of people I knew or had heard of. All boarding and exiting at stations that didn't match my reality. And each one looked at me as they left, with recognition that shouldn't have been possible. At the final stop, Fairmont Terminal in this reversed reality, the PA announced, Fairmont Terminal. Attention passenger Unit 16 operator, this is your stop. The train was empty now. All the passengers had exited. I sat in the cab staring at the empty platform at the date still displayed on the departure board. November 7th, 1985. My radio crackled. Unit 16, end of route. Proceed to depot for shift completion. The voice was mine, but older this time. Tired. The voice I imagined I'd have in another 20 years, worn down by decades of running the same routes, making the same announcements, watching the same stations blur past. I left the cab and stepped onto the platform. It was empty, but I could hear them. The passengers somewhere in the distance, their footsteps echoing through the station, and I realized what the reversed schedule meant. This wasn't a glitch, it was a route map, backward through time, collecting everyone who'd seen something they shouldn't, everyone who'd glimpsed the edges of the system that don't appear on official maps. We were all being taken back to the beginning, to whatever point the system had started keeping its own records. When I looked at my watch, it had stopped. 6:52 p.m., November 7th, 1985. The exact time I'd first arrived at Central Station on this reversed run. I've been trying to find my way back ever since. Running the same route, watching the same stations appear and disappear. Sometimes I see other operators, other versions of myself maybe, Running parallel routes I can't access. The schedule keeps reversing and I keep following it. Because what else can you do when the system tells you to proceed as directed? Last lines. Time moves differently down here, I think. The tunnels don't just connect places. They connect moments, instances folded over on themselves like paper. The reversed schedule is still running somewhere, collecting passengers from years that haven't happened yet or stopped happening long ago. And I wonder, are the voices we hear through the rails just echoes? Or are they live transmissions from operators still running those impossible routes? Maybe the track inspectors would know. They walk the lines we only pass through, checking the infrastructure that holds this whole system together. Steel conducts sound better than most people realize. It's a fact every track maintenance engineer learns early. How vibrations travel through rail. How you can hear a train coming from miles away just by placing your hand on the track. How the metal sings in different frequencies depending on temperature and tension. What they don't tell you is what else travels through that steel. Our crew, me, Marcus Webb, and a kid fresh out of training named Dylan Rourke, worked the night shift, midnight to 8 a.m. when train traffic was lightest. We'd walk the southbound line from Riverside to Commerce Terminal, checking rail integrity, tightening bolts, replacing worn components. It was methodical work, almost meditative, punctuated by the distant rumble of the occasional train and the echo of our tools against metal. We'd been working the same section for 3 weeks when Marcus first heard it. We were at mile marker 14, replacing a worn rail joint, when he stopped mid-swing and held up his hand. Dylan and I went quiet listening. At first I heard nothing except the usual tunnel ambience, the hum of ventilation, the drip of condensation, the faint electrical buzz from the power lines overhead. Then I heard it too. A voice, faint and distorted, like someone speaking through water or heavy static. It was coming from the rail itself, vibrating up through the metal where Marcus had his hand pressed against the track. "You hear that?" Marcus asked. Dylan knelt down and put his ear close to the rail. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. "Sounds like a radio? Someone's radio transmission bleeding through?" It wasn't impossible. Radio signals could interact strangely with metal infrastructure, especially underground where reflections and interference created weird acoustic effects. But this didn't sound like a radio. It sounded deliberate, focused, like someone speaking directly into the track. We tried to make out words, but the distortion was too severe. Just fragments of syllables, rising and falling in a rhythm that felt conversational, as if two people were talking to each other somewhere far down the line. "Probably just signal interference," I said, though I didn't entirely believe it. "We'll report it to communications, let them check for stray transmissions." We logged the incident and continued our shift. But the sound stayed with me. That particular cadence, the way it rose and fell, felt too organic for random interference. The next night, we heard it again. Same location, mile marker 14, but louder this time, clear enough that we could distinguish two voices overlapping, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Not English, not Spanish, not any language I could place. Marcus recorded it on his phone, holding the microphone against the rail. When we played it back later, the recording was mostly static, but underneath you could hear those same rhythmic sounds, almost like chanting. Dylan was spooked. What if it's some kind of, haunted track? Like people who died down here? "It's acoustic interference," I said firmly. "Steel amplifies and distorts ambient sound. Could be picking up audio from a nearby building, a subway platform, anything." But mile marker 14 was deep in the tunnel system, nowhere near any platforms or surface structures. There was nothing nearby to generate that kind of audio. The third night, the voices were everywhere. We started our shift at Riverside, and before we'd even reached mile marker 5, I could hear it, a low murmur coming through the tracks, following us as we walked. It wasn't stationary anymore. It was moving with us, or we were moving with it, the sound growing louder and softer as we progressed along the line. Marcus stopped at mile marker 8 and pressed his hand to the rail. The vibration was strong enough now that I could feel it through my boots without touching anything. "It's laughter," he said, pulling his hand back quickly. "Someone's laughing." Dylan and I listened. He was right. Underneath the distortion, there was a sound unmistakably like laughter. Not joyful, not manic, just constant. a low rolling chuckle that seemed to echo from deep within the steel itself. "We need to call this in," Dylan said. "This isn't normal." I radioed Central Maintenance, described what we were hearing, requested a technical team to check for electrical interference or structural anomalies. The supervisor on duty, a woman named Judith Carr, listened patiently and then said, "Continue your assigned route. We'll have a diagnostics team check the section during tomorrow's maintenance window." "Should we stop working in that area?" I asked. "No, proceed as scheduled. If there's an actual safety hazard, evacuate and report immediately." Laughter didn't constitute a safety hazard, apparently. We continued the shift. The voices grew more distinct as we approached mile marker 14. Not just laughter now, but words. Still distorted, still layered over each other, but recognizable as speech, and they were getting closer, the sound intensifying with each step we took. At mile marker 14, Marcus knelt and put both hands on the rail. "It's saying something," he whispered. "Listen," I knelt beside him. The steel was vibrating so strongly now that it felt alive, pulsing with a rhythm that matched human speech patterns. And underneath the layers of distortion I heard it, a single word repeated over and over. "Hello." Dylan backed away from the track. No, I'm not dealing with this." "It's just acoustic resonance," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Acoustic resonance didn't repeat words, didn't focus on a single greeting like it was waiting for an answer. Marcus looked at me. "What if we respond?" "What?" "What if we answer? See if it changes?" "That's insane," Dylan said. "You don't answer voices coming from the goddamn rails." But Marcus was already leaning close to the track, speaking clearly. "Hello, this is track maintenance crew. Mile marker 14. Identify yourself." The vibration stopped. Completely. The tunnel went silent except for our breathing and the distant hum of ventilation. Then slowly, it started again, louder now, more focused. And this time the word was different. Help, not distorted, not layered. Clear as if someone was standing right next to us, speaking directly into our ears. "Help us." Dylan was already running. I heard his footsteps echoing down the tunnel, panicked and quick. Marcus and I stood frozen, staring at the rail. "Who are you?" Marcus asked. The response came faster this time, words tumbling over each other, dozens of voices speaking in unison. "We're still here, still working. Can't leave. Can't stop. Help us. Please help us." I grabbed Marcus's arm. "We're leaving, now." He didn't argue. We gathered our tools and walked quickly back toward the riverside access point. Not quite running, but close. Behind us, the voices continued, following us through the steel, growing louder and more desperate with each step. "Don't leave. Don't leave us here. We've been here so long. We didn't stop until we reached the surface. Filed an emergency report with Central Maintenance describing everything. They sent a diagnostics team that morning to inspect the section. The team found nothing. No electrical interference, no structural anomalies, no audio equipment that could generate the sounds we'd described. The rails were clean, properly tensioned, acoustically normal. We were reassigned to a different section. Marcus requested it. I backed him up, and Dylan had already quit by the time they processed the request. He sent me a message a week later. I still hear them sometimes. At night when it's quiet. Like they're in the walls. I know what he means, 'cause I hear them too. Not through the rails anymore, and I haven't been down to that section since. But sometimes late at night when I'm lying in bed, I feel a vibration through the floor, faint, barely perceptible, but there. And if I press my hand to the ground, I can hear them. The voices beneath the track still asking for help, still working somewhere in the dark, unable to stop. And the thing that terrifies me most is the realization that slowly crystallized after we left. They weren't asking us to help them escape. They were asking us to join them, to answer, to engage. To become part of whatever crew is working down there in the sections we can't see, maintaining tracks that serve routes no one admits exist. Marcus transferred to surface operations a month later. Hasn't been underground since. When I asked him why, he just said, "The steel remembers everything, and I don't want to know what it remembers about me." I think I understand now. The tracks aren't just conducting sound. They're conducting us, our voices, our names, our shifts, adding us to some permanent record maintained by the system itself. And one day, when enough time has passed, someone else will walk mile marker 14 and press their hand to the rail, and they'll hear us, still working, still calling, still asking for help. Last lines. The tunnels are full of voices, I think. Echoes of everyone who's ever worked down here, layered into the infrastructure like sediment. The rails remember every footstep, every tool strike, every word spoken in the dark. And somewhere in that acoustic memory, we're all still there, still maintaining lines that never stop running. Maybe the signal technicians know. They work with the electrical systems, the transmission lines that carry more than just power through this network. Every station has an acoustic signature. That's what they taught us during audio systems training. The way sound reflects off tile walls, the delay between an announcement and its natural echo, the frequency absorption of crowds versus empty platforms. Understanding these signatures helps us calibrate the PA systems, ensuring announcements are clear no matter where passengers are standing. Meridian Street had a particularly pronounced echo. Something about the curved ceiling and the specific tile composition created a delay of about 2.3 seconds. You'd make an announcement and you'd hear it come back slightly distorted, like the station was agreeing with you. What they didn't teach us was what happens when the echo comes back hours later. I first noticed it during a routine maintenance check. I'd made a test announcement at 2:15 p.m., standard protocol, just reading the system clock time to verify the speakers in each zone. The current time is 2:15 p.m. This is a test of the public address system. At 4:47 p.m., I heard it again. I was in the equipment room updating the maintenance log when my own voice came through the monitoring speakers. The current time is 2:15 p.m. This is a test of the public address system. I checked the console. No active broadcasts. No scheduled announcements. The system was idle, but my voice continued, playing through every speaker in the station, perfectly timed with a natural 2.3-second echo, as if I'd just made the announcement. I reviewed the audio logs. My test broadcast at 2:15 p.m. was recorded. There was no entry at 4:47 p.m. According to the system, the repeat hadn't happened, but I'd heard it. And when I checked the security footage, I could see passengers on the platform reacting to it, looking up at the speakers, checking their phones to verify the time discrepancy. I reported it to my supervisor, Angela Torres. She pulled the logs herself, found nothing unusual, and suggested the monitoring speakers had glitched, playing back cached audio. Probably a buffer overflow, she said. The system's old. Sometimes it hiccups. Except buffer overflows don't wait exactly 2 hours and 32 minutes to replay audio, and they don't add the natural acoustic echo specific to that station. It happened again the next day. Morning announcement at 8:03 a.m. Next train to Central Station arriving in 3 minutes. Repeat at 10:35 a.m. Same voice, same words, same echo. This time I was ready. I recorded both broadcasts, the original and the echo, and compared them using audio analysis software. The waveforms were identical, down to the breath sounds and the slight static from the microphone. Perfect copies separated by 2 hours and 32 minutes. I started documenting every announcement and its echo. The pattern was consistent, 2 hours, 32 minutes, every single time. But after a week of documentation, I noticed something else. The echoes were changing. Subtly at first. A word replaced here, a phrase altered there. Nothing dramatic enough to be obvious during casual listening, but unmistakable when you compared the recordings. Side by side, original. Train delayed due to signal malfunction. Echo. Train delayed due to signal. Inspection. Original. Please stand clear of the closing doors. Echo. Please stand clear of the opening doors. Small changes. Semantic shifts that didn't alter the basic meaning but introduced subtle errors. Like the station was mishearing itself. Then the echoes started predicting. I made an announcement at 1:40 p.m. Track maintenance in progress. Expect minor delays. The echo came at 4:12 p.m. Track maintenance completed. Normal service resumed, but maintenance was still ongoing. Wasn't scheduled to finish until 6 p.m. At 5:55 p.m., the maintenance crew wrapped up early, called it done. Normal service resumed at 6:02 p.m. The echo had been right. I tested it deliberately after that. Made announcements about things that hadn't happened yet, just to see if the echo would correct them. All trains running on schedule. They weren't. We had a delay on line 3. The echo, 2 hours and 32 minutes later, Line 3 experiencing delays. All other trains on schedule. No service disruptions reported. There was a minor electrical issue at Commerce Terminal. The Echo. Minor electrical issue at Commerce Terminal. Repairs underway, the Echoes knew. They had information I didn't. Information that wouldn't be available for hours, sometimes days. I stopped making routine announcements. Started making false ones just to see how the Echoes would respond. Emergency evacuation in progress. There was no emergency. The Echo. Emergency drill completed. Thank you for your cooperation. It was correcting me, adjusting my announcements to align with reality. Not the reality I was experiencing, but the reality the station knew was coming. Angela pulled me aside after passengers started complaining about conflicting information. "What's going on with your announcements?" she asked. "People are hearing two different messages. I'm only making one," I said. "Then explain why we're getting complaints about contradictory PA broadcasts." I showed her the recordings, showed her the timing, the pattern, the predictions. She listened carefully, then said, "You're telling me the station is talking to itself." "I'm telling you the Echoes know things I don't." She reassigned me to administrative duty pending a psychological evaluation. Standard procedure when an employee reports impossible phenomena. I don't blame her. But I kept monitoring the PA system remotely, accessing the audio logs from home. The Echoes continued, even without me there to make announcements. The station was broadcasting on its own now, making predictions about delays, service changes, maintenance schedules. And they were always accurate. Last week, I heard something that made me stop listening entirely. An announcement at 3:17 a.m. when the station was closed and no staff were present. "Attention all transit personnel. System-wide route revision in progress. Please report to your assigned Echo designation for permanent duty assignment." The Echo at 5:49 a.m. Route revision complete. All personnel logged and archived. Thank you for your service. I checked the logs. 37 transit employees had called in sick that morning. 37 people who worked in stations with pronounced acoustic signatures. Stations where echoes lasted longer than normal. None of them have come back to work. And when I listen to the Meridian Street PA system now, late at night when no one else is monitoring, I hear them, all of them. Their voices layered into the announcements, making predictions, broadcasting information that hasn't been released yet. The station is keeping them, recording them, turning them into echoes, and I think eventually it'll come for me too. Because I've heard my voice on the PA system 3 times in the last week, making announcements I never made. The echoes are getting closer. Last lines. Sound doesn't die in these stations. It accumulates, building layer upon layer until the announcements become more real than the people making them. The echoes know what's coming because they're already there, existing in the time delay between broadcast and reception, seeing the future that's rushing toward us at exactly the speed of sound. Maybe the station attendants understand this. They hear every announcement, every echo, standing on platforms that collect sound like water pools in a storm drain. Control rooms see everything. 24 monitors arranged in a 3x8 grid, each one displaying a different section of the transit network. Train positions, passenger loads, signal status, platform cameras. It's overwhelming at first when you're new to dispatch, but after a few years you develop a kind of peripheral omniscience. You learn to scan all 24 screens simultaneously, picking out anomalies without consciously looking for them. I'd been working central dispatch for 6 years when Train Zero appeared. It was 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday, the dead zone between the last evening train and the first maintenance runs. The network was mostly empty, just 2 units returning to depot and 1 late-night express running the northern line. My screens showed their positions clearly. Unit 23, Unit 47, Unit 8, all where they should be. Then Monitor 14 flickered, and a new designation appeared. Train 0, location, Junction 7, status, active, operator, unknown. I stared at it. Train 0 wasn't a valid designation. Our fleet ran from Unit 1 through Unit 89. No gaps, no special designations. And Junction 7 didn't have any scheduled traffic for another 3 hours. I pulled up the fleet manifest. No Train 0, I checked the maintenance logs. No special units running tests. I queried the system for the train's identification transponder. The response came back. Transponder ID 00000. Authorization J. Fisher. Route undefined J. Fisher. My authorization code. I hadn't authorized anything. I keyed the radio. Unit 0, this is Central Dispatch. Please identify yourself and state your current route. Static. Not dead air. Actual radio static, the kind you get when a signal is being actively blocked or distorted. On monitor 14, train 0 was moving. Not quickly, maybe 30 miles per hour, but moving with purpose, following tracks that led away from Junction 7 toward the Southern Maintenance Depot. Except it wasn't following the main line. I overlaid the route map on the monitor. Train 0 was on a track that branched off the main line about half a mile past Junction 7, heading into a section marked in gray on my display. Unmapped territory. Probably old service tunnels or abandoned extensions. I tried the radio again. Unit 0, you are off designated routes. Return to main line immediately. The train didn't respond, but its speed increased. I logged the incident and called my supervisor, Kenneth Marks, who was technically off duty, but lived close enough to respond to emergencies. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. There's an unidentified train on the network, I said. Designation 0, no operator, showing my authorization code. It's heading into unmapped sections. Silence. Then, pull up the visual feed. I switched monitor 14 to the nearest camera, a tunnel camera about a quarter mile from train 0's current position. The feed showed empty track, normal lighting, nothing unusual. Train 0 passed through the camera's field of view 10 seconds later. It was old. Not vintage, not lovingly restored. Genuinely old, with rust streaks on the exterior and windows so grimy they looked opaque. The model was nothing I recognized, somewhere between the 1960s design language and something more primitive, industrial. No exterior lights were functioning. The unit number painted on the side was faded but legible. 0. Where the hell did that come from? Kenneth asked. I don't know. It just appeared on my board. Can you route it back to depot? I tried. Pulled up the remote override system, entered train 0's designation, and commanded a route change back to the Southern Depot. The system accepted the command. On monitor 14, train 0 turned at the next junction, smoothly transitioning onto a different track that would loop it back toward mapped territory. I hadn't sent that command. Kenneth, it's responding to commands I'm not giving. What do you mean? I mean I entered a route change, but the train was already turning before I hit execute. It knew what I was going to do. That's not possible, but it was happening. I tested it again. Prepared a command to slow train 0 to 15 miles per hour, but didn't execute it. On the monitor, train 0 decelerated smoothly, hitting exactly 15 mph 3 seconds before I would have sent the command. It was reading my intentions. Or predicting them. Or responding to some version of me that had already sent the commands in a timeline I couldn't perceive. I'm coming in, Kenneth said. Don't let that train out of your sight. I tracked train 0 for the next 40 minutes, watching it navigate the network with eerie precision. It avoided every other train, always taking switches that led away from active routes. It wasn't randomly wandering. It was looking for something at 4:05 a.m. It found it. Monitor 14 showed train 0 approaching a section I'd never seen before. A branch line that didn't appear on any of my route maps, extending into blank space on the grid. The tunnel entrance was marked with a faded sign I could just make out on the camera feed. Maintenance access, authorized personnel only. Train 0 didn't slow. It entered the tunnel and disappeared from my monitoring grid, not because it went out of camera range. It disappeared from the system entirely. No transponder signal, no position data, no status updates. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. I checked every monitor, reviewed every camera feed in the area. Nothing. Kenneth arrived 20 minutes later and pulled up the system logs himself, verifying what I'd seen. Train 0 had existed for 48 minutes, traveled approximately 14 miles through the network, and then vanished into a tunnel that shouldn't exist. Pull the authorization logs, he said. I want to see who actually authorized this thing. I queried the database. The authorization for Train 0 was logged at 3:15 a.m., 2 minutes before it appeared on my board. Authorized by J. Fisher, entered from my workstation terminal. I didn't enter that, I said. I was getting coffee at 3:15. The terminal was locked. Kenneth checked the security footage. At 3:15 a.m., I was visible in the break room pouring coffee. My workstation was empty, monitor displaying the screensaver. But the authorization had been entered. Logged, time-stamped, cryptographically signed with my credentials. Someone cloned your access, Kenneth said. Change your password immediately. I did. New password, new security questions, two-factor authentication enabled. 2 days later, Train Zero appeared again. Same designation, same authorization code, same J. Fisher signature. This time, I was watching my workstation continuously. No commands entered, no access attempts. But Train Zero was on my board, moving through Junction 12, heading toward that same blank section of the grid. And this time, I noticed something on the visual feed. There was someone in the cab. The image was distorted. The windows too grimy for a clear view. But I could see a silhouette in the operator's seat. Someone sitting exactly where an operator should be. Hands on the controls, running Train Zero through the network. I enhanced the image, filtering out glare and dirt. The silhouette resolved slowly, pixel by pixel. It was me. Not similar. Not someone who looks like me. It was my face, my posture, my hands on those controls. I was operating Train Zero, except I was sitting in central dispatch 5 miles from the nearest train, staring at a monitor showing myself doing something I absolutely was not doing. Kenneth saw it too. Jesus Christ, Fisher. I know. Train Zero continued its route, heading toward that unmapped tunnel. This time, I didn't try to stop it. I just watched my doppelganger navigate the network with practiced efficiency, making all the right switches, maintaining perfect speed. At the tunnel entrance, Train Zero stopped. The operator, the other me, turned toward the camera, stared directly at me, and mouthed 3 words I could read clearly despite the distance and the distortion. You authorized this. Then Train Zero entered the tunnel and vanished. I pulled every record I could access. Authorization logs, maintenance schedules, historical route data. Searched for any reference to Train Zero, any explanation for its existence. I found one entry. A maintenance note from 1974, logged by a dispatcher named Jonathan Fisher. No relation, common name. The note described an experimental automated train designated Unit Zero, tested briefly and then decommissioned due to unpredictable autonomous behavior. The note ended with a warning. Unit Zero responds to operator intent rather than direct commands. Do not authorize for passenger service. Recommend permanent decommissioning. Jonathan Fisher had died in 1976. Heart attack at his workstation, alone during a night shift. His authorization code was still in the system. J. Fisher, the same code assigned to me when I started 6 years ago. Train Zero appears on my board once a week now, always during my shift, always authorized with my credentials. I've stopped trying to track it. Stopped trying to command it, because I realized what it's doing. It's running the routes I think about but don't execute. The alternate schedules I consider and discard. The commands I almost send but cancel at the last moment. It's operating in the space between intention and action, following the transit network that exists in my mind but not in reality. And one day, I think it's going to expect me to board, to take my place in that cab, to become the operator I've already been in some timeline I can't access. The authorization is already logged. After all, I signed it myself, I just haven't done it yet. Last lines. The network has layers we don't see from central dispatch, branches that respond to thought rather than command, trains that run on routes mapped in the intentions of operators rather than the physical rails. Train Zero is still out there, still running, still waiting for the moment when what I think and what I do finally align. Maybe the clock operators would understand. They maintain the timing systems, the schedules that determine when everything runs, when everything connects. They might know how time folds back on itself down here. Precision timing is everything in transit operations. The master clock and central control synchronized every system, train schedules, signal sequences, departure boards, shift changes. It received time signals from atomic clock servers, accurate to microseconds. In 6 years of operations, it had never drifted more than 0.3 seconds from true time, until it started slowing during my shifts. The first instance was so subtle I almost missed it. I was logging the evening schedule at 11:47 p.m. when I noticed the master clock showed 11:46 p.m. I assumed I'd misread it, but when I checked my watch, synchronized that morning to the same atomic time server, it confirmed 11:47. The master clock was 1 minute slow. I reported it to maintenance. They ran diagnostics remotely, found no errors, and noted that the clock resynced perfectly after my shift ended. Probably a brief network hiccup during time server polling, the technician said. Nothing to worry about. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that, always during my shift, always slowing gradually, losing minutes across the 8-hour period, then snapping back to correct time the moment my replacement, Marcus Holt, clocked in. After a week, I started documenting it systematically, created a spreadsheet tracking the clock's drift. How many minutes lost per hour, when the slowdown started, when it corrected. The pattern was consistent. Good Oscar PM, shift start. Master clock synchronized, 0 drift. 12:30 a.m., clock 3 minutes slow. 2 a.m., clock 8 minutes slow. 3:15 a.m., clock 15 minutes slow. 7 a.m., shift end. Clock resyncs to correct time within 30 seconds. The drift was accelerating. Not linear, but exponential, as if time itself was encountering increasing resistance during my shifts. The really disturbing part came when I checked the security. Cameras. Standard procedure required monitoring. The platform cameras every 30 minutes, scanning for safety hazards or unusual passenger behavior. During one of these checks at 2:47 a.m., according to the master clock, which was actually 2:55 a.m., I noticed something wrong with the feed. The timestamp on the camera display showed 2:47 a.m. matching the master clock. But the passengers on the platform weren't moving. Not slowly. Not at all. They were frozen mid-stride, mid-gesture, like a paused video. I switched to a different camera. Same issue. Passengers locked in place. Departure boards frozen mid-update. Even the pigeons on the tracks motionless. But the master clock kept ticking. Slower than it should, but still advancing second by second. I was moving through time at a different rate than everything outside the control room. I tested it, set a timer on my phone for 5 minutes, and watched the master clock. When my phone alarm went off, the master clock had advanced 3 minutes and 41 seconds. Time was running at roughly 73% normal speed inside the control room. Only during my shift. Only when I was alone. I stayed late one night, told Marcus I needed to finish some paperwork, asked him to start his rounds while I wrapped up. The moment he left the control room, the master clock jumped forward, resyncing to correct time. The camera feeds unfroze. The passengers resumed motion. Whatever was slowing time only affected me when I was alone in the room. I should have reported it. Should have demanded a transfer, a psychological evaluation, something, but I was terrified they'd dismiss it as operator fatigue or stress-induced hallucination. I'd seen it happen to others. Operators who reported anomalies were quietly reassigned to administrative duties. Their careers effectively ended, so I started staying later, testing the limits, trying to understand what was happening. At 3:17 a.m., with the master clock showing 3:02 a.m., 15 minutes slow, I noticed movement on one of the platform cameras, not passengers. I was on the platform at Riverside Station, wearing my uniform, standing perfectly still and staring up at the camera. I was also sitting in the control room, looking at the monitor. I checked my employee locator beacon, the RFID tag all operations staff wear that shows our position in the system. It showed me in 2 places simultaneously, Central Control and Riverside Station platform. The me on the camera didn't move, just stared at the lens with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not fear, not confusion, something closer to recognition, like I was looking at myself and finally understanding something I'd been missing. I switched cameras, cycling through the system. Found myself on 4 more platforms: Monument Park, Commerce Terminal, Junction 12, Fairmont Station. All standing motionless, all staring at cameras, all existing simultaneously. The master clock showed 3:02 a.m. My watch showed 3:24 a.m. I was becoming unstuck, spreading across the system in multiple temporal instances, each one frozen at different points while the version of me in the control room continued to drift slower and slower. I left the control room, walked down the corridor to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, tried to ground myself in physical reality. When I returned, the master clock had jumped forward to 3:28 a.m., only 4 minutes slow now, catching up because I'd left. But the camera feeds showed something new. All the versions of me on the platforms had turned to face the same direction, toward central control, toward the room I was sitting in. They started moving simultaneously, walking in perfect synchronization, boarding trains that appeared on the tracks. Different trains, different directions, but all departing at exactly 3:28 a.m. I tracked them on the monitors, watched multiple versions of myself ride the system, each one heading toward a different destination, each one sitting alone in an empty car. At 3:52 a.m., 3:41 a.m. on the master clock, they all arrived simultaneously, not at stations. In the tunnels! The trains stopped between platforms, doors opening onto darkness, and the versions of me stepped out onto the tracks. The camera feeds went black. Not offline, just black, like the cameras were still functioning, but there was nothing to see, as if the tunnels had become voids. The master clock stopped completely. 3:41 a.m. frozen. My watch continued. 3:53 a.m., 3:54 a.m., 3:55 a.m. I sat in the control room, the only thing still moving through time at normal speed, while the entire system hung suspended around me. Trains frozen mid-journey. Passengers motionless. The master clock locked at 3:41 a.m., and then I heard it. Footsteps in the corridor outside the control room. Multiple sets, perfectly synchronized, walking toward my door. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Just sat there as the footsteps approached, stopped outside the door and waited. The door opened. They filed in silently. 5 versions of myself wearing the same uniform, each one slightly different. Older, younger, wearing different expressions. They took positions around the control room, standing at the various workstations, and stared at the monitors. One of them, the oldest-looking version, with gray in his hair I didn't have yet, Item spoke. "You need to stop staying late." "What is this?" I managed. This is what happens when you drift too far. When you let the time differential spread across too many instances, you become unfocused, distributed. Eventually you don't resync at all. "I don't understand." The older me gestured at the frozen master clock. Time moves differently in central control. Always has. Something about the position underground. The intersection of all the routes, the concentration of temporal flow. Most operators never notice because they don't stay past their shifts. But you've been lingering, extending the drift. Letting yourself split. How do I stop it? You don't, you just manage it. Leave when your shift ends. Don't monitor the clock. Don't try to understand it, he paused. And never ever stay overnight. That's when you fracture completely. What happens then? All 5 versions of me spoke simultaneously. You become part of the system. Permanent. Distributed across all the control rooms and all the possible timelines. Monitoring everything, unable to leave. They turned and walked out, filing through the door in the same synchronized motion. The moment the last version crossed the threshold, the master clock jumped forward. 7:03 a.m. My shift was over, had been over for 3 minutes. Marcus was standing in the doorway looking confused. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," I said. "I don't stay late anymore. Don't check the master clock's drift. Don't monitor the cameras any longer than required. But sometimes, on the feeds from other control rooms, the auxiliary stations, the emergency backup centers, I see someone who looks familiar, someone wearing my uniform, my face, my posture. Working shifts I never signed up for, in timelines I can't access, still trying to resync, still waiting for 7:03 a.m. Last lines. Time is different underground, and I've always known that. But I never realized how different until it started folding back on itself inside me. The control room doesn't just monitor the system. It exists in all versions of the system simultaneously, and anyone who stays too long starts to do the same. Maybe the replacement operators know. The ones who cover our shifts when we call in sick, who slot into our schedules without any transition time. Maybe they've seen us already working when they arrive. I remember the incident clearly, or at least I think I do. It was a routine evening run, Unit 14 on the Crosstown Local, when I felt the chest pain, sharp, radiating down my left arm, textbook cardiac symptoms. I called it in, stopped the train at Riverside Station, and the next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance with paramedics asking me to rate my pain on a scale of 1 to 10. They kept me overnight for observation. Ran tests. Found nothing wrong. Probably stress-related, the cardiologist said. Take a few days off, come back when you feel ready. I took 3 days. Spent them at home, catching up on sleep, trying not to think about the transit system. On day 4, I went back to work, checked in with my supervisor, Patricia Lennon, and resumed my normal schedule. Except when I signed in at the operator's desk, my name was already there. Not in the usual place, the active roster. In the archived section, the list maintained for operators on medical leave or long-term absence. Name, Kyle Brennan. Status, on leave. Medical replacement, Kyle Brennan. Provisional. Return date, TBD. I stared at it. My name appeared twice in the system. Once as an operator on medical leave, once as the provisional replacement covering my own shifts. I called Patricia over. There's an error in the roster. I'm listed twice. She checked her tablet, frowned. That's strange. System shows you've been on leave since the cardiac incident, but you're also here. She looked at me, confused. When did you come back? Today, this morning. You cleared me yourself. I don't remember doing that. She pulled up her emails, scrolling back through the week. There's no return to work authorization here. No clearance from medical. According to this, you're still off on medical leave. Then who's been running my shifts? She checked the operational logs. Unit 14 Crosstown Local had run every scheduled trip since my incident. Every single one. No delays, no substitutions, no gaps. The provisional operator, she said slowly. Kyle Brennan. Your replacement. That's me. No. She showed me the tablet. Different employee ID. Look, my employee ID was KB2247. The replacement operator's ID was KB2247B, same initials, same base number, but with a suffix that indicated a provisional or temporary assignment. Who authorized a provisional with my name? I asked. Patricia didn't know. She escalated it to HR, who escalated it to operations management, who eventually told me to just continue working. We'll sort out the database error, they said. In the meantime, you're cleared for normal duties. Use your original ID, KB2247. So I did, but KB2247B kept working too. I'd check the operational logs after my shifts, and there they were, parallel entries. I'd run the morning Crosstown Local, KB2247, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and KB2247B would run the evening Crosstown Local, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. We were splitting my original schedule. Each taking half. I tried to find them. Stayed late one day, waiting in the operator's break room until 2 p.m., watching for whoever was going to clock in as KB2247B. At 1:45 p.m., they walked in. It was me. Not similar. Not a look-alike, identical. Same face, same build, same uniform. They nodded at me casually like we were colleagues who'd worked together for years and went to the assignment board to check their route. I stood up. Who are you? They turned, looking mildly confused. Kyle Brennan, KB2247B. I'm covering the evening Crosstown. You're not me. No, they agreed. You're KB2247, I'm 2247B, the provisional. They said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like duplicate operators were standard procedure. Where did you come from? Same place you did. The cardiac incident. They needed someone to cover your shifts while you recovered. So they split the assignment. They checked their watch. I need to get to Unit 14, evening rush starts soon. They walked past me, heading toward the depot. I followed, keeping a few steps behind, watching myself navigate the facility with perfect familiarity. They knew the layout, the procedures, even returned greetings from other staff by name. At Unit 14, they performed the pre-departure check exactly the way I did. Same sequence, same timing. Even the same habit of tapping the brake control twice before engaging the throttle. I radioed Patricia. The provisional operator. KB2247B, they're me. I know it's confusing, she said. HR is working on it. No, you don't understand. They are physically me. Same person, silence. Then, Kyle, maybe you should take another few days off. The stress from the incident, I'm fine. I'm telling you, there's someone running my shifts who looks exactly like me. The provisional operator has been fully vetted. They're authorized to work until you return. I have returned. According to the system, you're still on medical leave. I gave up trying to explain it. Just watched KB2247B operate my train, my route, with my exact technique. Over the next few weeks, I tried to avoid them. Worked my morning shifts, clocked out before they arrived. But I kept checking the logs, watching their performance metrics. They were perfect. Better than my usual numbers. 0 delays, 0 complaints, higher passenger satisfaction scores. KB2247B was a better version of me. One day, I arrived for my shift at 5:50 a.m. and found them already there. Standing at the assignment board. "You're early," I said. They turned. "No, you're late. Your shift started at 5:30. My shift starts at 6 cows. They showed me their tablet. The schedule had changed. KB2247B was assigned to the morning crosstown, 5:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. KB2247, me, was moved to a different route entirely. A short afternoon run from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. "They didn't tell me about this," I said. "Check your email." I did. There it was. Notification of schedule change dated 2 weeks ago. I'd never seen it before, but according to the system, it had been sent to my account and marked as red.kb2247b, smiled sympathetically. The transition can be confusing, but you'll adapt. The provisional assignments usually do. I'm not provisional. You are. Not according to the current roster. They showed me the tablet again. Name, Kyle Brennan. Status, active employee. DKB2247B. Name, Kyle Brennan. Status, provisional, medical transition. Employee ID, KB2247. We'd switched. Somehow the system had reversed our designations. They were now the permanent operator. I was the provisional. I filed complaints, demanded meetings with HR, with operations management, with anyone who'd listen. They all told me the same thing. The roster reflected current assignments, and KB2247B had seniority. "But I've worked here for 8 years," I said. "KB2247B has worked here for 8 years, they corrected. "You've been here for 6 weeks, since the medical transition." They were rewriting my history, assigning my experience, my seniority, my entire employment record to the replacement. I still work here. Still run my 4-hour afternoon shift. Still clock in as KB2247, the provisional operator covering for myself. But every week my schedule shrinks. 4 hours became 3. 3 became 2. Last week I was assigned a single 1-hour run, a test route basically. Training duty at KB2247B runs the full schedule now, morning and evening. They've taken over my entire position, and when I check the roster, I see the inevitable progression. Name, Kyle Brennan. Status, active employee. DKB2247B. Name, Kyle Brennan. Status, archived. Position filled employee. ID, KB2247. The return date field is blank. Because I never left medical leave, I'm still recovering. Apparently, from an incident I don't remember having, while someone else lives my life, runs my routes, and slowly erases me from the system one shift at a time. Last lines. Replacement operators are supposed to be temporary, placeholders until the original returns. But I think the system doesn't always distinguish between the two, doesn't care which version of us is real as long as the shifts get covered, and maybe there are others like me, still working, still clocking in, while better versions operate the same routes with our names and faces. Maybe the platform supervisors know. They see every operator come and go, track every sign-in, every ID badge scan. Maybe they've noticed the duplicates. Platform numbering follows strict logic. Ground level starts at Platform 1, descending in sequence. Platform 2, Platform 3, etc., down to Platform 9, the deepest station in the system. Simple, consistent, impossible to confuse. Every operator learns the platform sequence during basic training, commits it to memory along with the route maps and safety protocols. There is no Platform 0, never has been. The numbering begins at 1, so when the new trainee, Rebecca Walsh, came to me claiming she'd seen passengers waiting at Platform 0, I assumed she'd misread a sign or gotten confused about the station layout. Platform 0 doesn't exist, I told her. We were in the break room at Central Station, end of her 3rd day training. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed by the information overload all new operators experience. The platforms here are 1 through 4. Check your station map. She pulled out the laminated reference card all trainees carry. I know what the map says. But there was a stairwell past Platform 4 leading down. I thought it might be a service access, but when I got to the bottom, there was another platform. The sign said 0. Service tunnels don't have platform numbers. You probably saw a maintenance designation, Section 0 or Junction 0. Easy to misinterpret. It was a platform, she insisted, with benches, departure boards, everything. And there were people waiting. Maybe 20 of them just standing there. Did you ask anyone what they were waiting for? She hesitated. No, they were wrong. I don't know how to explain it. They weren't moving, just standing in perfect lines, staring at the tracks. It felt wrong, so I left. I should have dismissed it. Should have chalked it up to fatigue and the disorienting nature of underground work. But something about her description bothered me. The specificity, the insistence. Show me, I said. We went back to Platform 4, the lowest regular platform at Central Station. It was late evening, past rush hour, with only a handful of passengers scattered along the length. At the far end, near the southern exit tunnel, I saw what Rebecca was talking about. A stairwell. Narrow, older construction than the rest of the station, with the kind of tile work that dated back to the system's original 1950s build. I'd walked past this platform hundreds of times and never noticed it. There was no sign indicating where it led. No safety barriers or authorized personnel-only warnings. Just stairs descending into darkness. You went down there? I asked. Rebecca nodded. Is it not supposed to be there? I don't know. Let me check. I radioed Central Operations. This is Platform Supervisor Kent Lawson at Central 4. Can you confirm if there's an access tunnel at the south end of this platform? The response was immediate. Negative, Central 4. No auxiliary access at that location. The platform terminates at the emergency exit. I looked at the stairwell. It was clearly there. Old, dusty, but structurally sound. Copy that, thanks. I turned to Rebecca. Wait here. You're going down? Just to check. Probably just an old maintenance access someone forgot to mark properly. I descended the stairs slowly, using my flashlight to illuminate the steps. The air grew colder as I went down. Not gradually, but in distinct layers, as if I was passing through thermal zones. The stairwell curved left after about 30 steps and then opened into a platform. Platform 0. It was exactly as Rebecca had described. A full platform, maybe 100 feet long, with vintage benches and a departure board mounted at the center. The board was active, displaying a single line in amber text, Platform 0, service to all points. Continuous departure, the platform was occupied. Not crowded, but definitely occupied. 23 people, I counted them, standing in evenly spaced positions along the yellow safety line. They weren't moving, weren't talking, just standing, facing the tracks, waiting. I approached the nearest person, a woman in a dated business suit. Excuse me, what train are you waiting for? She didn't respond. Didn't even acknowledge my presence. I touched her shoulder. She was cold. Not corpse cold, just cold like she'd been standing in refrigeration. And when I looked closely, I realized she wasn't breathing. None of them were. My radio crackled. Central 4 Supervisor, please respond. I keyed the mic. This is Lawson. I'm at Platform 0. There are passengers here, but something's wrong with them. Platform 0 doesn't exist, Supervisor. Please confirm your location. I'm directly below Platform 4. There's a stairwell. There is no platform below 4. You're either in a service tunnel or you've exited the station. Return to your designated platform immediately. I looked around. This was clearly a platform. The design, the infrastructure, the layout, all consistent with the rest of Central Station, just older. Original construction before the renovations. A sound echoed through the tunnel, the distant rumble of an approaching train. The passengers remained motionless, but the departure board updated. Arriving Naui backed toward the stairwell, keeping my eyes on the tunnel. Train lights appeared in the darkness, growing brighter, accompanied by the screech of steel on steel. The train was coming fast. Too fast for a station approach. It emerged from the tunnel at full speed, then decelerated sharply, stopping perfectly aligned with the platform edge. The doors opened. The train was empty. Not a single passenger inside. But when I looked at the windows, I saw reflections. Not of the platform. Not of me standing there. Reflections of the motionless passengers. But they were different in the reflections. Moving. Animated. Living. Versions of the frozen people on the platform, and they were looking at me, one of the reflected figures. A man in the business attire of the 1960s pointed toward the open doors, gestured for me to board. Behind me, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rebecca appeared, looking panicked. They said you weren't responding. They said she stopped seeing the train. What is that? Get back upstairs, I said quietly. Right now. But now she retreated up the stairs. I followed, keeping my eyes on the train. The reflected passengers were still visible in the windows, still gesturing, still inviting. The doors closed. The train pulled away, accelerating back into the tunnel. When I reached Platform 4, operations was waiting. 2 supervisors, a security guard, and a maintenance technician. They'd pulled up the station schematics on a tablet, showing me the official layout. There's no Platform 0, the senior supervisor said. Look, the structure terminates at 4. Below this level is solid bedrock. No excavation, no tunnels, no platforms. I was just down there, I said. Both of us were. There's a stairwell at the south end. They walked me to the location I'd indicated. The wall was solid. No stairwell, no doorway, just continuous tiling and an emergency equipment cabinet. Right here, I insisted. There was a stairwell right here 20 minutes ago. Rebecca looked pale. I saw it too. I went down there earlier today. The maintenance technician used a concrete scanner on the wall, checking for voids or hidden spaces. Solid, he confirmed. No cavities. No access points. They filed an incident report, recommended I take the rest of the shift off, suggested I schedule a checkup with occupational health. Standard procedure for unusual incidents. I went home, tried to sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about those passengers standing motionless and their reflections that moved when they didn't. The next day, I checked the system's historical records, searched for any reference to Platform 0, to lower levels at Central Station, to excavations below Platform 4. I found one notation. Buried in a 1957 planning document, proposed Platform 0, Deep Express service, canceled due to structural concerns and project cost overruns. Excavation completed but platform abandoned in place. Access sealed per safety requirements, sealed, not demolished, sealed, which meant it was still there, just inaccessible. Except it wasn't inaccessible. I'd been there, seen it, seen them. I went back to Central Station during my next shift, checked the south end of Platform 4 again. The wall was solid. No stairwell, but at 11:47 p.m., I remember the exact time and I heard it. The distant sound of a train arriving, muffled by layers of concrete and tile. The sound came from below Platform 4, from a place operations insisted didn't exist. I pressed my ear against the wall. The train sound faded, replaced by a different noise. Footsteps, dozens of them, walking in synchronized rhythm, echoing up through the structure. And then faintly, I heard the departure board announcement. The same mechanical voice used throughout the station, but speaking words I didn't catch. All except the last 2. Platform 0. I filed a second report. This one was more detailed, citing the historical documents, providing exact timestamps for the sounds I'd heard. Operations reviewed it and responded with a formal memo. Platform 0 is a discontinued infrastructure project and does not constitute an active station. No trains serve this location. Any reports of activity should be attributed to acoustic anomalies or maintenance operations in adjacent service tunnels. In other words, stop reporting it. I haven't seen the stairwell since. Haven't been able to access Platform 0 again, but I hear it sometimes, late at night when the station is quiet. The sound of that train arriving, departing, arriving again on a continuous loop. And I wonder about those passengers. The ones standing motionless, waiting for a train that serves all points, that departs continuously. Where are they going? And why did their reflections want me to board? Rebecca transferred to a different station. Said she couldn't work at Central anymore, that she heard things in the walls, voices calling from levels that didn't exist. I'm still here. Still supervising Platform 4. Still listening to the sounds that come from below. From the place operations says isn't there. And every night at 11:47 p.m., I press my ear against that solid wall and hear the same thing. The departure board, announcing the next train to Platform 0, and the footsteps of passengers walking toward the tracks. One day, I think, the stairwell will appear again, and I won't be able to resist following it down. Last lines. The deeper platforms hold older memories, I think. Layers of abandoned infrastructure that the system never fully erased, just sealed away and forgot. Platform Zero is still running trains, still collecting passengers, still serving routes that don't appear on any current map. And I suspect it's not alone. There are other sealed levels, other platforms with impossible numbers, still operating in the spaces between official stations. Maybe the janitors know. They clean the places the rest of us don't see, access the service corridors that connect the forgotten parts of the system. Aaron Welch had worked maintenance for 19 years. Most of that time spent cleaning the parts of the system passengers never saw. Service tunnels, emergency access corridors, the connector sections between active lines. He was quiet, methodical, the kind of employee who showed up exactly on time and left exactly when his shift ended. Never complaining, never requesting time off. He also talked about the stains. Every few months, usually during breaks when the maintenance crews gathered in the depot cafeteria, Aaron would mention them. The tiles in Tunnel 7 are stained again, he'd say. Same pattern as before. I cleaned it 3 times and it comes back. It's mineral deposits, someone would answer. Water seepage. Use a stronger cleaner. I've used every cleaner we have. It doesn't help. Then it's probably permanent. Just log it and move on. Aaron would nod and return to his coffee, but you could tell it bothered him. The stains, the patterns, the way they persisted no matter what he tried. I worked in the same maintenance division, handling electrical systems while Aaron handled sanitation. We weren't close, but we'd share shifts occasionally, passing each other in the tunnels as we worked our respective routes. He'd always nod, sometimes comment on the work. Light fixtures in Section 9 are flickering again, or water pressure's low near Junction 15. The last time I saw him was a Thursday. He'd been assigned to deep tunnel cleaning, the really isolated sections that only got serviced once a month. He looked tired, more so than usual, and when I asked if he was okay, he said, "The stains are spreading. They're not just on the tiles anymore. They're on the ceiling, the support beams, even the rails. Same pattern everywhere." "Maybe it's rust," I suggested. "The humidity down there, it's not rust," he said flatly. "Rust doesn't form words." I thought he was joking. "Words? Not English. I don't know what language. But they're deliberate, repeating, and they're getting longer." I didn't know what to say to that. Aaron had always been rational, grounded. Hearing him talk about language formed by stains felt wrong, like he was crossing into territory that wasn't safe. "You should report that to maintenance admin," I said carefully. "If there's something unusual, they should document it. I've reported it 6 times. They keep saying it's environmental, but it's not. It's communication." He walked away before I could respond. Aaron didn't show up for his shift Friday, or Saturday. By Monday, his supervisor, Lou Grant, filed a missing person report. Aaron's apartment was empty. Not abandoned, just empty. No signs of struggle, no note, no indication where he'd gone. His car was still parked in his assigned spot at the depot. His locker was still full of personal items, spare uniform, lunch thermos, a photo of his daughter. He'd simply stopped coming to work. The transit authority hired a replacement janitor to cover Aaron's routes. They cleaned the same tunnels, filed the same reports, made no mention of stains forming words. A week later, I found the report in my work inbox. It was a standard maintenance inspection form, the kind Aaron would file weekly. This one was for Tunnel 7, dated next Monday, 5 days in the future, and signed with Aaron's employee ID and digital signature. The report was complete. Detailed notes on tile condition, equipment status, cleaning procedures applied. Everything filled out with Aaron's characteristic precision. I checked the timestamp. The document had been uploaded to the internal system at 3:47 a.m. that morning, from a terminal in the deep tunnel maintenance station, a location that required badge access and biometric verification. I called Lou. "Aaron's report just came through. For next Monday." "What do you mean next Monday?" "The date on the report. It's for a shift that hasn't happened yet." Silence. Then, "Send it to me." I forwarded the document. Lou called back 10 minutes later. "His badge hasn't been used since last Thursday. The system shows no access to that terminal since Saturday, and that was the new janitor. This has to be a clerical error. A cached document or something. It's dated 5 days from now. Documents can have incorrect dates. Happens with system glitches. But I'd worked with Aaron for years. He didn't make mistakes with dates or documentation. If the report said Monday, he meant Monday. I went to Tunnel 7 during my next shift. I wasn't assigned there. It was outside my normal route. But I wanted to see the stains Aaron had talked about. Wanted to understand what he'd been dealing with. The tunnel was exactly as he described in previous reports. Old tile work, aging infrastructure, minimal lighting. And the stains, they covered everything. Not random discoloration, but deliberate patterns. Geometric shapes, repeated symbols, arrangements that suggested intentionality. And they were fresh. Not decades of accumulated grime, but recent, as if someone had painted them with precision. I took photos, sent them to Lou with a message. This is what Aaron was reporting. This isn't environmental, Lou responded. Document it and log it. I'll escalate to facilities management. I walked the length of the tunnel, photographing every section. The patterns changed as I progressed deeper, becoming more complex, more dense until at the far end, near the sealed access door to an abandoned section, the entire wall was covered, and Aaron was right. They formed words, not English, not any language I recognized, but definitely language, structured, grammatical, with repeated elements that suggested syntax. And at the center of the largest concentration, written in a cleaner, more deliberate hand, was a single phrase I could read: Aaron Welch, maintenance technician. Still working, I backed away from the wall, heart pounding. Called Lou immediately. He's here. The message says he's still working. What message? On the wall. In Tunnel 7, it says Aaron Welch is still working. Lou arrived 30 minutes later with a facilities team. They photographed everything, took samples of the stains, ran chemical analysis. The results came back as organic material, biological residue of some kind, though the exact composition was inconclusive. They sealed the tunnel, posted notices indicating structural concerns and restricted access. The official report stated, Tunnel 7 temporarily closed for maintenance and air quality assessment, but the reports kept coming. Every week, like clockwork, a new inspection document would appear in the maintenance system, always dated for the following Monday. Always signed by Aaron, always describing work performed in sections that were now sealed or restricted. Tunnel 7, stains cleaned. Pattern recurrence within 24 hours. Recommend investigation of source. Junction 15. Tile replacement required. Symbols reforming faster than removal allows. Deep section corridor. Communication patterns intensifying. Unable to translate. Continuing documentation. We stopped opening them after a while. Just archived them automatically, treating them as system glitches, but they never stopped coming. I checked his employee file last month. Status terminated, voluntary resignation. Last shift worked, Thursday 6 months ago, but the reports continue. Every Monday morning a new one appears, documenting work performed in tunnels we've sealed using procedures Aaron followed, describing stains that facilities management insists don't exist. Last week's report included a new line, request additional staff for deep tunnel maintenance. Current coverage insufficient. Tunnels expanding faster than one technician can service. Expanding. He said the tunnels were expanding. I checked the system maps. They hadn't changed. The same network we'd operated for decades, no new construction, no expansions. But I've started hearing things during my shifts. The sound of cleaning equipment running in sealed sections. The echo of footsteps in tunnels no one should be accessing. And once, late at night when I was checking a junction box near the Tunnel 7 entrance, I heard a voice. Aaron's voice. Calm professional, making notes to himself the way he always did. Stains recurring in sections 7 through 12. Pattern suggests communication attempt. Recommend increased documentation frequency. I pressed my ear to the sealed door. The voice continued, growing fainter, moving deeper into the restricted area. I haven't tried to open that door, because I realized what the reports were really saying. Aaron didn't disappear. He's still working, still cleaning, still documenting the stains that form words in languages we don't understand. And the tunnels he's maintaining aren't the ones on our maps. They're the ones the stains are writing into existence, expanding the system into spaces that shouldn't be there, creating new routes in the dark that Aaron has to service because someone has to, because the stains won't stop spreading, and someone has to keep them documented. Last lines. Maintenance workers see the infrastructure the rest of us just passed through. the layers beneath the functional tunnels, the spaces that exist only for service and cleaning, the places that persist even after we seal them off. Aaron's still there, filing reports from sections that grow faster than we can map them, cleaning stains that write their own expansion orders. Maybe the maintenance supervisors have noticed. They assign the routes, schedule the crews, track who enters which sections. Maybe they've seen the assignments that no one remembers making, the shifts that cover tunnels we don't acknowledge. Signal maintenance is precise work. Every light in the system follows strict protocols. Red means stop. Green means proceed. Yellow means prepare to stop. They're controlled by automated systems, sensors that detect train positions and adjust accordingly. The timing is calculated down to the second, optimized for traffic flow and safety. The signals don't blink randomly. They don't deviate from their programming, unless they're malfunctioning. I noticed the pattern during a routine night inspection. Signal 47, located at the entrance to Tunnel 9, was cycling through its sequence incorrectly. Red, green, red, green, red, red, green, not the standard red, yellow, green progression. Just red and green, alternating in intervals that seemed irregular. I logged it as a malfunction and scheduled a replacement. But when I came back the next night, it was still doing it. Same pattern, same intervals. I ran a diagnostic. The system reported the signal as functioning normally, receiving correct commands from the central traffic controller. But what I was seeing didn't match normal operation. I started timing it, pulled out my phone and recorded the light sequence, noting the duration of each color. Red, 3 seconds. Green, 2 seconds. Red, 3 seconds. Red, 5 seconds. Green, 1 second. It wasn't random. The intervals were too consistent, too deliberate. I pulled up a Morse code reference chart and started translating. 3 seconds red, 2 seconds green, 3 seconds red, dash, dot, K. I kept recording, working through the entire sequence. It took 47 cycles before it repeated, KYLE, my name. The signal was blinking my name in Morse code. I reported it immediately. Submitted the recordings, the translation, everything. The response from the Signal Maintenance Division was skeptical. Visual anomaly or interpretation error. Signal 47 operating within normal parameters. No action required, but I knew what I'd seen, what I'd translated. The next night, Signal 47 was still blinking. Same pattern, same name. I brought Marcus Webb, one of the track maintenance engineers, to verify. Just watch, I said. Count the intervals. We stood there for 10 minutes, recording the pattern. Marcus worked through the translation himself, comparing it to the Morse reference. That's your name, he said finally. I know. How is it doing that? I don't know. We checked the signal controller, the wiring, the communication lines. Everything was standard. The signal was receiving normal commands. Red when the system said red, green when the system said green. But somehow the timing of those commands was encoding a message. Could be a coincidence, Marcus suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. My name in Morse repeated perfectly is a coincidence? Then someone's hacked the signal system, pranking you. Who would even know how to do that? He didn't have an answer. The pattern continued for a week. Every night, Signal 47 blinked my name. 53 cycles per hour, continuous. I stopped reporting it. No one believed me anyway. Then other signals started doing it. Signal 12 at the Southern Junction. Signal 23 near Central Station. Signal 31 at the depot entrance. All of them blinking in Morse, all of them spelling the same thing. KYLEI was being paged. Summoned by the signal system itself. I tried ignoring it. Worked different shifts, different sections, anywhere away from those signals. But I could feel them. Even when I wasn't looking, I knew they were blinking. Calling me, waiting. I started having dreams about them. Rows of red lights in the darkness, all synchronized, all pulsing my name. And beneath the lights, tracks extending into nowhere, inviting me to follow. 3 weeks after Signal 47 started, I went to Tunnel 9 at 3:47 a.m., during the dead zone between the last train and the first maintenance run. Signal 47 was blinking. Red, green, red, red, green, KYLE. I stood directly under it, looking up at the light. What do you want? The pattern changed. Red, 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 green, green, red. Green, red, red, green. I translated FOLLOW, follow. The signal light brightened, then dimmed, then pointed, physically angled its beam. which shouldn't be possible for a fixed signal, toward the tunnel, toward the darkness beyond the entrance. I don't remember making the decision to walk. Just found myself moving, following the path illuminated by that single red beam. The tunnel swallowed me, and behind me, Signal 47 went dark. But ahead, deeper in the tunnel, another signal activated, Signal 48, blinking the same pattern, KYLE. FOLLOWI followed, past Signal 48, which went dark as I approached, to Signal 49, to Signal 50, each one blinking my name, each one directing me deeper into the network. The tunnel changed. The walls became older, the infrastructure more primitive. I was walking through sections that predated the modern system, original excavations from the 1950s that had been abandoned when the routes were redesigned. Signal 63 was the last one. It blinked my name, then added a new message. RRIVED. The light went red and stayed red. No blinking, no green, just solid red, illuminating a section of tunnel that ended in a collapsed wall. Not natural collapse. Deliberate. Sealed with concrete and rebar. Marked with faded warnings. Danger. No access beyond this point. I pressed my hand against the concrete. It was vibrating. Faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Then I realized what it was. Morse code, transmitted through the structure itself. Dozens of signals, maybe hundreds, all blinking in synchronization beyond the wall. All calling the same name, KYLE. 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 I backed away. Ran back through the tunnel. Past the dark signals. Past the sealed sections, all the way to Tunnel 9's entrance. Signal 47 was blinking again. Normal pattern this time. Standard red-yellow-green cycling, as if nothing had happened. But when I checked the other signals over the following days, they were all back to normal. No more Morse code. No more messages. Until tonight. I'm writing this in the equipment room at Central Station. It's 3:46 a.m. In 1 minute, Signal 47 will start blinking again. I know because I can feel it. The same way I felt it before. And tonight, the message is different. Not my name. A location. Signal 47 is blinking coordinates now, directions to somewhere deep in the system, somewhere I've never been, and I know with absolute certainty that I'm going to follow them. Because the signals aren't malfunctioning, they're navigating, leading me to something that's been waiting behind that sealed wall, something that knows my name, something that's been calling me through every red light in the network. It's 3:47 a.m. now. Signal 47 just started. Last lines. The signals see everything, every train, every operator, every person who walks the tunnels. They track our movements, time our passages, remember our routes, and I think they've always been conscious, waiting for someone to notice the patterns, to understand the language they've been speaking in red and green for decades. Maybe the electricians know. They maintain the signal systems, wire the lights, troubleshoot the controllers. Maybe they've seen the codes that shouldn't be there. The messages running through circuits that aren't in the schematics. Radio silence is the worst sound in dispatch. You get used to the constant chatter. Operators checking in, maintenance crews coordinating, dispatch confirming routes. It's white noise after a while, a reassuring background hum that tells you the system is alive, functioning. When that sound stops, something is catastrophically wrong. I was working the overnight dispatch shift, midnight to 8 a.m., when every channel went silent simultaneously, not gradually. Not one frequency dying after another. All of them at exactly 2:17 a.m. just stopped. I was monitoring Channel 7 when it happened, an operator calling in a minor delay at Riverside Station. Mid-sentence, his voice cut out. I waited for him to resume transmission, assuming signal interference or a radio malfunction. But the carrier wave was still active. The frequency was live, just empty. I switched to Channel 3. Dead air. Channel 5, dead air. I cycled through all 12 operational channels. Nothing. No static, no crosstalk, no background noise. Just the faint hiss of open frequencies carrying nothing. I keyed my transmitter. Central dispatch to all units. Radio check. Please confirm reception. My voice echoed back in my headset. The normal self-monitoring feedback. But no responses. The entire network was silent. I checked the console status lights. All green. Power nominal. Antenna systems functional. The radio infrastructure was working perfectly, but no one was transmitting. I pulled up the system map showing active trains. 37 units were on the network, all moving according to schedule. They were out there running routes carrying passengers, but none of them were talking. I tried the emergency broadcast frequency, the channel reserved for critical system-wide announcements. Keyed the mic and spoke clearly. "This is Central Dispatch on Emergency Channel. All operators, please acknowledge. This is an emergency radio check." Nothing. I was about to call my supervisor when I heard it. A voice, faint, distorted, coming through Channel 12, a maintenance frequency rarely used for active communication, not normal transmission. Not someone calling for dispatch or requesting clearance. A man's voice, calm and measured, reading numbers. 40.7158 north, 74.0027 west coordinates. Latitude and longitude. The voice continued, reading another set. 40.7163 north, 74.0031 west. I grabbed a notepad and started writing them down. The voice never paused, never acknowledged anything except the coordinates. Just kept reading, methodical and precise, moving through a sequence. After collecting 20 sets of coordinates, I pulled up a mapping program and started plotting them. They formed a rough circle, maybe 2 miles in diameter, centered somewhere beneath the city. I plotted more coordinates as the voice continued. The circle became more defined, more precise, and I realized with growing unease that all of them were underground, subway depths, tunnel elevations. The voice read 47 sets of coordinates before it stopped. Not mid-transmission, just completed its sequence and went silent. I stared at the map I'd created. A perfect circle traced beneath the city, passing through multiple transit lines, intersecting stations, connecting points that had no obvious relationship. I pulled up the transit system overlay. The circle passed through or near 15 different stations and tunnels, including Central Station, where I was sitting. When I calculated the exact center of the circle, the coordinates pointed to the dispatch center, to my room, to my chair. I was sitting at the epicenter. I tried the radio again. "Central Dispatch to all units. If anyone can hear this transmission, please respond." The voice came back on Channel 12. 40.7200 north, 74.0000 west, my coordinates. The exact location of Central Dispatch, accurate to 4 decimal places. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Identify yourself." The voice didn't acknowledge the question, just continued with a new coordinate. 40.7203 north, 74.0005 west, a location 300 feet north of me, somewhere in the tunnel system beneath Central Station. I plotted it. The new coordinates were starting a second circle, smaller than the first, also centered on my position. My supervisor, Charles Rourke, arrived at 2:45 a.m. I'd sent him an emergency text when the radio first went silent. He stood in the doorway listening to the voice reading coordinates on Channel 12. "What is that?" he asked. "I don't know. Every other channel is dead. This is the only active transmission." He tried the radio himself, cycling through channels, attempting to raise any unit. Nothing. Just that one voice, still reading coordinates, still tracing circles around us. "Where are these coordinates?" Charles asked. I showed him the map. The first circle, complete. The second circle, about 60% finished. His face went pale. "This is centered on us. I know, we need to evacuate now, and go where?" "The coordinates are mapping the entire underground system. Wherever we go, we're inside the circle," the voice continued. The second circle completed at 3:12 a.m. Then a third circle started, smaller still, maybe a quarter-mile diameter. With each circle, the voice became clearer, less distorted, more present, as if getting closer. Charles called emergency services, but the phone lines were dead too. Not cut, just silent. He pulled out his cell phone, no signal. None of the communication systems worked except Channel 12, where the voice kept reading coordinates with mechanical precision. The fourth circle completed at 3:47 a.m. The fifth circle began immediately. "It's getting tighter," I said. "Each circle is smaller. It's closing in." "On what?" Charles asked. "On us." The voice was clear now. No distortion at all. It sounded like it was broadcasting from the same room, speaking directly into the microphone on my console. 40.7200 north, 74.0000 west. My exact coordinates again. The center, Charles grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Right now. We left the dispatch center and headed for the exit stairs. But when we reached the door to the stairwell, it wouldn't open. Not locked, just wouldn't move. As if the structure itself had seized. We tried the elevator. Dead. The emergency exit. Sealed. We were trapped in the dispatch center. The voice continued on channel 12. The sixth circle, even smaller, was completing. Then a seventh. An eighth. Charles was panicking, pulling on doors, trying to break windows that had never been designed to break. I just sat at the console, watching the map fill with nested circles, each one tightening around our position. At 4:32 a.m., the voice changed its pattern. Instead of coordinates, it began reading names. Station names: Central Station, Riverside Station, Monument Park Station, Commerce Terminal. It was listing every station in the system, all 93 of them in alphabetical order. When it finished the stations, it started reading train designations. Unit numbers: Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, all 89 units methodically cataloged. Then employee names: Aaron Welch, Kyle Brennan, Rebecca Walsh. My blood went cold when I heard my own name in the sequence. Not first. Somewhere in the middle, between two other dispatchers I'd worked with years ago. Charles heard his name too. His face was gray. The voice was inventorying the entire transit system. Every component, every location, every person, as if taking roll call, confirming what existed, what was present inside the circles. At 5:17 a.m., the voice stopped reading names and returned to coordinates. But these weren't mapping circles anymore. They were mapping something else. A network. Lines connecting points branching out from the center like a spider web or a root system. I plotted them automatically, hands moving on their own, too terrified to stop. The pattern emerged slowly on my screen. It was the transit system, but not the one I knew. This was different, more extensive, with lines that didn't exist on any official map. Stations in locations that had never been built. Connections between sections that should have been isolated. This was the complete system. The full network, including everything that had been planned but never constructed. Everything that had been sealed or abandoned. Everything that existed in blueprints and proposals but never in reality. And it was all active. All those impossible lines, all those phantom stations. The map showed them as operational, with trains running through them, with passengers waiting on platforms that didn't exist. The voice read the final coordinate at 6 a.m. Then it said something different. Network inventory complete. All units accounted for. Dispatch confirmed at center node. Proceed with integration. The radio went silent. Every channel, even channel 12, total dead air. Charles and I sat in that silence for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Then slowly the radios came back. Channel 3 first. An operator calling in a routine status update. Channel 5. A maintenance crew requesting track clearance. Channel 7. Normal dispatch chatter. The system was alive again, functioning normally as if nothing had happened. Charles tried the stairwell door. It opened easily. We left the dispatch center, walked out into the morning shift change like we'd completed a normal overnight rotation. But when I looked back at the dispatch console, the screen was still displaying that map. The complete network, the full system with all its impossible branches, and at the center, a single point marked in red. My workstation, labeled Primary Dispatch Node, Integrated. I don't know what integration means, but I know the voice was right about one thing. I am at the center. And every night since, at exactly 2:17 a.m., Channel 12 activates for 1 second, not long enough to transmit anything, just long enough to confirm I'm still here, still listening, still at the center of circles I can't escape. Last lines. The radio network is more than communication. It's the nervous system of the transit network, carrying signals we don't understand, mapping connections between locations that exist only in transmission. The voice knew every station, every train, every name, because the radios hear everything, remember everything, catalog everything that passes through these tunnels. Maybe the loop operators know. They run the circular routes, the trains that turn back on themselves, connecting endpoints that somehow meet in the middle. The loop line is supposed to be a metaphor. That's what they tell you in training. Loop line just means a circular route that returns to its starting point. You pick up passengers, make your stops, and end where you began. Simple. Efficient. The most common route design in any transit system. I operated Loop 3 for 11 years, 12 stops, 47 minutes per circuit, running continuously from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'd complete 16 loops per shift, starting and ending at Monument Park Station. The route never changed. Same tunnels, same signals, same stations. I memorized every curve, every track switch, every section where the lights flickered because of bad wiring no one had bothered to fix until 3 months ago, when the route started repeating. Not in the normal way. Not completing the circuit and returning to Monument Park, repeating within itself. I first noticed at Harrison Street Station, stop 7 on the loop. The platform looked exactly like the one I'd departed from at Riverside Station, stop 3. Same tile pattern, same advertisement posters, same maintenance cart parked near the stairs. I radioed dispatch. Central, Unit 19 reporting possible signage error. Harrison Street platform matches Riverside configuration. Unit 19, please clarify. The platform layout at Harrison looks identical to Riverside. Same tiles, same ads, same equipment. A pause. Unit 19, you are confirmed at Harrison Street. Proceed with normal route. I let it go, assumed I was tired, seeing patterns that weren't there. The stations shared some design elements. They'd been built during the same construction phase. Easy to confuse them late at night. But at the next stop, Bellevue Avenue, stop 8, I saw the same platform again. Identical configuration. The same maintenance cart in the exact same position. I was passing through the same station over and over, even though my route display showed different designations. The passengers didn't seem to notice. They boarded, rode a few stops, exited. Normal commuter behavior. But I started paying attention to them, trying to see if the same people appeared at multiple stations. They did. A woman in a gray coat boarded at Harrison Street, rode 3 stops, exited at what the display called Riverside Station, which looked identical to Harrison, which looked identical to Riverside. 10 minutes later, she boarded again at the next station. Same gray coat, same tired expression, same seat preference. She looked at me through the connecting window, made eye contact, and I saw recognition in her face. Not the recognition of a regular commuter who sees the same operator daily, something deeper. Like she remembered me from years ago, or from a version of this route that had happened before, or from something that hadn't happened yet. I completed the circuit, or what should have been a circuit. The train returned to Monument Park Station at the scheduled time. I filed no report. What would I say? The stations looked the same. The passengers are repeating. I was seeing patterns in the routine, that's all. The second loop that night was worse. Every single station was identical, not similar. Identical. Same platform, same tiles, same graffiti on the support beam near the stairs. A blue tag that said Echo in angular letters. I saw that tag 12 times in one circuit. The passengers were repeating too. The woman in the gray coat appeared at every station, boarding, riding, exiting, boarding again. Each time she stared at me a little longer. By the 4th loop, there were others I recognized. A man in a maintenance uniform carrying a toolbox that he never opened. A teenager with headphones, silently mouthing words to music I couldn't hear. An elderly man reading the same newspaper, never turning the page. They all looked at me like they knew me. At 2:47 a.m. during the 7th loop, I stopped the train between stations, pulled the emergency brake and sat in the cab, trying to understand what was happening. The radio crackled. Unit 19, why have you stopped? I need to report an anomaly. State the nature of the anomaly. My route is looping. I'm passing the same stations repeatedly. Unit 19, you are operating Loop 3. The route is designed to loop. Not like this. Every station looks identical. The passengers are repeating. Silence. Then, Unit 19, remain at your current position. Maintenance will inspect the train. I waited. 20 minutes passed. No maintenance crew arrived. I radioed again. Central, status on maintenance response? Unit 19, what maintenance response? You said you were sending maintenance. Negative, Unit 19. We have no record of that transmission. You are showing no stops or delays on our board. Please confirm your current status. I stopped the train 20 minutes ago. We've been sitting in the tunnel between... I checked my position markers. Between Harrison and Bellevue. Unit 19, your train is showing in motion. You departed Harrison 3 minutes ago and are approaching Bellevue on schedule. I looked at my controls. The train was stopped. I could see the tunnel walls through the windshield, stationary. Feel the stillness. But according to dispatch, I was moving. I released the brake and advanced the throttle. The train lurched forward, and Bellevue Station appeared ahead exactly on schedule. The platform was identical to every other platform I'd seen that night. The same maintenance cart, the same graffiti, the same passengers waiting, including me. I was standing on the platform, wearing my operator's uniform, watching my train approach. The me on the platform looked exactly as I'd looked 11 years ago when I first started operating Loop 3. Younger, less tired, eyes that hadn't yet memorized every tunnel curve. As the train passed, the younger me raised a hand, not waving, pointing, at the cab, at me. The passengers boarded, including the woman in the gray coat. She took her usual seat, and this time when she looked at me, she spoke. I couldn't hear her through the connecting door, but I could read her lips. You've been here before. I completed that loop in a fog. Stopped at each station, watched the same platforms appear, saw versions of myself at 3 more stops. Different ages, different expressions, all pointing at the train. At Monument Park, the scheduled end of the circuit, I didn't stop. Just blew through the station at full speed, ignoring dispatch calls, ignoring the passengers trying to exit. I had to break the loop. Had to find where the route actually ended. The train continued. Past Monument Park, into tunnels I'd never seen, though they looked exactly like the ones I'd been traveling for years. The stations blurred past and all identical, all showing variations of myself on the platforms, all holding passengers who stared with increasing recognition. At 4:17 a.m., the tunnel opened into something I'd never encountered. A massive circular chamber, maybe a 1/4 mile in diameter. And running around the perimeter, following the chamber walls in a perfect circle, were dozens of trains. All of them were Unit 19. My train, duplicated endlessly, each one running the same track, maintaining the same speed, carrying the same passengers. I could see myself in each cab. Different ages, different stages of exhaustion, but all me. All operating Loop 3. All trying to find the terminal station that didn't exist. My train merged into the rotation automatically, joining the endless procession. And I realized what had happened. I'd never completed a loop. Not once in 11 years. The route didn't return to its starting point. It spiraled inward, each circuit taking me deeper into the system, each lap adding another version of me to the rotation. Every night I'd been running the same route, but never finishing, never terminating, just adding layers. The loop line didn't connect to anything. It just looped, forever. And every version of me operating these trains had figured it out at different times. The young me on the platform at Bellevue had just started to understand. The older versions, the ones I'd seen at later stations, had been running this route for decades in their own timelines. We were all trapped in the same loop, at different stages of realization. The woman in the gray coat stood and walked to the connecting door, pressed her face against the window and spoke clearly enough that I could hear through the glass. There's no terminal station. There never was. You're the loop, and the loop is you. We're all just riding it, watching you figure it out again and again. I checked the route display. It showed Loop 3, no terminal station, continuous service, not a malfunction, not an error. That's what it had always said. I just never read it carefully. No terminal station. The route was designed never to end. I'm still operating Loop 3, still passing the same stations, watching the same passengers board and exit, seeing versions of myself at different points in the realization. Sometimes I see operators from other units in adjacent chambers, Loop 1, Loop 2, Loop 4 through 9, all running their own infinite circuits, all carrying passengers who ride forever without reaching any destination. The schedule says I work midnight to 6 a.m., but I haven't seen 6 a.m. in years. The time on my console resets every 47 minutes, back to 10 p.m., when Loop 3 begins. I've tried stopping, tried abandoning the train. But every time I leave the cab, I end up on a platform waiting for the next train, and when it arrives, I'm driving it. The loop doesn't let you leave, it just keeps running. And the woman in the gray coat was right, I'm not operating the loop. I am the loop. And I'll keep running this route, completing circuits that never finish, passing stations that are all the same station, carrying passengers who are all the same passengers forever and ever and ever, because that's what no terminal station really means. Not that there's no place to stop. But that stopping is no longer possible. The loop consumed me years ago. I just kept driving anyway, pretending I was still going somewhere, still following a schedule, still working shifts that would eventually end. They won't. They never do. Not on the loop line. Last lines. The circular routes were supposed to be efficient, returning to where they started so the system could run continuously without dead ends or wasted travel. But I think some circles don't return. They just recurve endlessly into themselves, folding operators and passengers into repetitions we can't escape. The loop line is still running, still showing on the system map as active service. And somewhere in the nested circles of the transit network, all the loops converge. Maybe that's where the system really begins, or maybe that's where it never ends.